red light went on.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the April meeting of the Rehoboth Beach Board of Adjustment. Roll call to my left, please.
William Pearlstein.
Jan Conacy.
Fred Townsend, Board Attorney.
Edie Heron.
Mark Saunders.
And Barry Brandt. Everyone's present. And was the meeting and public notice properly posted?
The agenda for the Board of Adjustment regular meeting was posted in City Hall and on the city portal on April 16th and amended and reposted on April 19th and April 22nd. Public notice for case number 0324-03 for the property located at 53 Sussex Street was posted in City Hall and on the city portal on April 5th. The public notice was published in the KPZ on April 12th and April 16th, and Delaware State News on April 10th and April 12th. Notification specific to this case was mailed out to property owner addresses within 200 feet of the subject property, and signing was posted on the property. That's all I have.
Thank you. And I noticed on the city portal, we did not receive any public correspondence. Did any come in late this morning or any last minute? Okay, thank you. All right, this afternoon, we have two cases on the calendar. One case is an old matter from March, and we deferred it until today for validation of the existing FAR information and additional information requested by the board. The second is a new case for a variance of the FAR. In both cases today, the board will apply the quick check factors that Delaware law recognizes as guidance for the Board of Adjustment. Under Delaware law, an applicant for an area variance must prove that the requirements create an exceptional practical difficulty. To determine whether the exceptional practical difficulty exists, the board must weigh four factors. Number one, the nature of the zone where the property lies. Two, the character and use of the immediate vicinity. Three, whether removal of the restrictions on the applicant's property would seriously affect neighboring properties and their uses. And finally, number four, whether failure to remove the restriction would create an exceptional practical difficulty for the owner in relation to the owner's efforts to make normal improvements to the property. These standards are only satisfied when the difficulties alleged by the owner are practical rather than theoretical, and exceptional rather than routine. Everyone who wishes to speak today, we're going to ask them to be sworn in by Mr. Townsend. We do not have a reporter here, so if we need any transcripts in the future, Ann will have to work from our tape recording, so please speak up. At any point, if no one can hear, just stop us and we'll move to the microphone and make sure we are recorded. Is anyone in the audience wishing to speak today? I think you'll have, okay.
And there's one individual.
One back there. Okay, thank you. We'll call on you at the appropriate time. We like to offer, or request that public commentary should be limited to 5 minutes or less. And Ann, I think you did say all the notices surrounding the property were properly posted?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And as we go through hearing the building inspector and the applicant, we will ask questions, and then at a point, we will close down the public portion, and the board will discuss the cases, and of course, in front of you. Both of these are FAR-related cases, and I want to let everyone know, you may see from time to time a board member using an electronic device. They are only using it to look at some of these small numbers in these drawings. They are not using it to communicate with anyone in here or external. So let's move on to our first case under old business. It is case number 1123-11 for 123 2nd Street. And it's a continuation, and we did ask for recalculation of FAR information as well as financial information to be presented to the board, which we did receive. So I want to first start with the building inspector's amended report. Matt?
Thank you, Chair. And good afternoon, Board of Adjustment, members of the public and applicants, and happy Monday. I guess for expediency purposes, I'm just going to comment on my report the numbers that I revised, because the report remained the same with exception to the numbers. So from page 1, the old report listed 45,920 square feet, or a FAR of 2.24. That has been revised to 47,986 square feet and a FAR of 234. On second page, the numbers changed are in red again on my newest report. The old report read 2.24 FAR to 2.89. That is actually 2.34 to 2.71, or an increase from the old report of 13,317. The new report reflects 7,608. I'm glad to take any questions at this time.
I'd like to say thank you, Matt, for all the work that it must have taken for you and the applicants to put these numbers together. I think it's critical that we have them, as I mentioned last time, and it's wonderful to have them in front of us. Thank you again, all of you who took part in it.
You're welcome, and I do apologize for the 11th hour submittal of these corrected documents. It was a little bit of challenge for the applicant and I to get together considering our schedules. So thank you for the kudos, if you will.
And the applicant agrees on those numbers?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Thank you, Matt. All right, let's move on to the applicant.
Thank you. Again, for the record, I'm still Vince Robertson and still with Parkassi, Garrick, and Swayze, and I'm still here on behalf of Rehoboth Hotel LLC, which is an affiliate of Harvey Hanna. And if we could get the PowerPoint on the screens. While she's doing that, it is not my intention or our intention to replow a lot of old ground with this. We already presented a record previously and went over a lot of information. Based on that, we came back in with what you asked for, which is clarification of the square footage in the FAR. We are requesting a variance which increases the existing legal non-conforming FAR of 2.3408 to 2.7119, which is an additional FAR square footage of 7,608 square feet. We already provided you with the certified floor plans and the tables that reflect that. That information is also signed and sealed by our architect of record, who's here this afternoon and is available to answer any questions. One of the other things that you asked for and we provided are the due diligence reports that were done prior to acquisition, and that was previously submitted. There's, for the record, one dated September 13th, 2021 from McIntosh, and the other one is dated September 7th, 2021 from Blake and Vaughn. Those reports are self-evident and self-explanatory, and they mirror the testimony that was given by Craig Johnson, who is the construction manager for this project. So again, because it's all based on information you have and prior testimony, I'm not going to go through those this afternoon. I assume you've all had an opportunity to review those. Certainly we'll answer questions at the end. One thing I would ask is, we have a narrative to go through, and I think if you let us get through that and then have any questions at the end, perhaps we will have answered your questions when we go through the whole presentation, and then certainly we'll make ourselves available to answer any questions at that point. As you certainly note, and the chairman recognized, we didn't have the financial information to you prior to the last hearing. We didn't actually get to that during the last hearing at all. We've since provided that to you, and we're going to have testimony from Mike Nash and Murray Dingwall, where there he is, who's back from Scotland again to testify on the financials. With the floor plans, as Mr. Janis mentioned, there was a collaborative effort to provide the square footage calculations and also the FAR. And with that, what I'd like to do is just call up Mike Nash, if you'd come forward. And Mike, you need to be sworn in. Mr. Townsend.
Oh, name and address, please.
Michael Nash, 1099 Germantown Avenue, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Mr. Nash, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. Mr. Nash, if you could just, for the record and for the benefit of the board, describe your professional background and your history with the company.
Good afternoon. So I am a vice president of construction for Harvey Hanna. I've been with the company for almost 3 years now. I acted as more of an owner's rep for this particular project. My construction background is about just under 27 years, corporate, private, and industrial. So what we have on the screen here is we started with the FAR from our total square footage from last time, and we realized that we were off. So what we did is we just kind of put that aside. We got with our architect of record, and we kind of started from scratch, which I think was the right thing to do. At the board's request, we did go back and we did that. So what we have here is all of the square footage that's accounted toward FAR is 47,986. The area of square footage that is non-FAR, 18,265. So that puts us at 2.3408 for our FAR ratio. That's existing. Our proposed is 7,608 square feet, which puts us at 55,594 overall FAR square footage, which will then put us at 2.7119. So with that, we got with the architect, which is Brian Adams from Alliance Architecture. We sat down with Matt Janis. Matt and I have spoken several times on the phone as well. And we just went through to make sure that we were on the same page, that we were aligned with how we were looking at the definitions of the code with the city of Rehoboth. Did we count all of the FAR, all of the square footage toward the proper FAR? When we sat down with Matt, Matt did have several other pieces that he wanted to make sure that we did have included. So we did that, and that's where we ended up with what you see here today.
And if I could, Mr. Adams, if you would just come forward. Mike, you want to take a step back? This is Brian Adams, the architect, not the singer. Mr. Adams, if you would, yeah, we need to get him sworn in by Mr. Townsend first.
Mr. Adams, can you give us an address for the record, please?
Sure. 3220 Apple Butter Road, Danielsville, PA 18038.
And, sir, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, Mr. Adams, just real quick, could you provide for the board your professional biography and also explain your role as the architect of record for this project?
Sure. I'm Brian Adams, a registered architect of Delaware, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. My role in this was to certify and confirm the square footages for FAR, which we did with a joint meeting with Mr. Janis and representatives from the team, which I can certify and confirm that these numbers up here are accurate. Basically, the square footages are from the gross square footages of the building, and those were determined through CAD, and the calculations done that way.
And is that your seal on the bottom of this table, but also all the floor plans?
Yes, it
And you
is.
stand behind all the information that's on there?
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Adams. The next couple slides are all the floor plans. These are not changed. I'm not going to go through all these floor plans because, again, we already did that last hearing. What we've done is what's on that table, which is verify the square footage shown on those floor plans and the before and after FAR. Bear with me 1 second. So what I'd like to do next is just briefly summarize the quick check standards, kind of what we've already covered and where we're going to go from here. The first one is the nature of the zone where the property lies. Again, it's not disputed that the property is commercially zoned and a hotel is a permitted use there. The second one is the character of the neighborhood where the property is located. Again, intensely developed and institutional uses. We have the Breakers Hotel, Rehoboth Beach Volunteer Fire Company, City Hall, the large and well-used municipal parking lot, which is actually full today, the Rehoboth Convention Center, which is also full today, the city's water tower, and the United States Post Office. Again, I think what's on there, everybody knows who's familiar with Rehoboth Beach on the screen. The third item is whether if the restriction upon the applicant's property were removed, such a removal would seriously affect the neighboring property uses. This is the adverse impact standard. That's what the shorthand for that is. And again, there's no evidence in the record that there's any adverse impact on the neighboring properties. In fact, last time we were here, we had the Rehoboth Beach Fire Company, which is the immediate neighbor aside from the water tower, state that they didn't have any objection to it. And the elevated expansion within the buildings that we propose and within the building's current footprint actually enhances the building's character. As Mr. Johnson testified, it balances the structure and its facade, increasing the curb appeal. And you can see that this is the structure that exists today. And if I can do this without dropping things. So over here, this is the front facade. This is a two-story parapet here that mirrors what was there with the sandcastle. And this is what we propose. So again, it's the balancing of that 10-room addition with the additional FAR, which adds the slate blue area up top as additional visible bulk or FAR.
Is that the color that it will be as well? Is the plan, or are you just letting us see exactly what's different?
Yeah, that's the color it's going to be. There's been,
He-
oh, I thought you were saying yes. Okay.
Okay.
I thought he was giving me the
It really
nod.
doesn't matter. I was just wondering if this is really what your plan is, or if you're indicating for us what's changing.
Yeah. For the record, that was Will Harvey. He's with the project, and since he wasn't with the microphone, he stated that the color may change. So the fourth item is the exceptional practical difficulty standard, and what we've done is broken that down into two subsections. Basically, the hotel has sustained an exceptional practical difficulty during the redevelopment of it, the redevelopment of the old Sandcastle Hotel. And again, there's sort of two categories we put this into. The first is that the LLC incurred substantial unforeseen expenses, including those related to the structural MEP, which is mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, health and safety risks. That's the financial part of it, which we're going to get to in a moment. And the second sort of category is that we adhere to the guidelines laid out in the city's comprehensive development plans for adaptive redevelopment. The substantial unforeseen expenses, again, there were substantial unforeseen structural MEP health and safety risks that were discovered once construction began at Coast. We already provided those photographs, I think, in our original application and during our hearing last time. I'm not going to go through those again, but to summarize them, there were structural wall components that had rusted beyond repair. Roof structures had rotted and were near collapse. And there was a question about that, I know, during the last hearing. And if you look at the McIntosh report that we provided, they actually said that structurally they're okay. The quote was, "The current condition has not caused any structural issues." They talked about looking at the drainage so that structural issues wouldn't be caused, but they said there were not structural issues at this time. Foundations were incorrectly built or had shifted. Mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems were beyond saving, and there was mold that was discovered extensively throughout the building, all hidden beneath the surface of the roof and the walls. The other thing was, and this is really, I think, serious in terms of the potential for not only my clients, but the city and folks who would have been staying in the Sandcastle, it was at risk of catastrophic structural failure, and it should not have been inhabited pre-development. I see Matt shaking his head at the same time. To Matt's credit, when this was discovered by my clients and their construction team, they immediately went and consulted with the city. Everybody realized exactly how bad it was. The demolition permit was issued and it was rebuilt, which was, again, a health and safety, I think, requirement at that point, given the catastrophic condition of it. But the hotel took care of that immediately, and it was a significant expense. And then the final, Rehoboth Hotel, the request for the variance, again, is required to achieve additional revenues to offset the unexpected financial costs incurred during at the construction of it. So with that, what I'd like to do is you finally get to hear from Mr. Dingwall on the financials. Mr. Dingwall, if you'd come forward. And you're going to have to get sworn in as well. So, Mr. Townsend, if you would take care of that.
Can we have an address for you, Mr. Dingwall?
405 East Marsh Lane, Newport, Delaware, 19804.
Sir, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And before I go there, we've been saying you're from Scotland the whole time, and then you just gave an address of Newport.
And we didn't challenge you on that.
So that's the office address.
That's an office
Yeah, but you
address.
do reside in Scotland.
Yeah, I lived and worked in Delaware for 30 years and moved back to Scotland for family reasons back in October of last year.
Mr. Dingwall, the board, well, first of all, if you could explain a little bit your history with the company. You just did a little bit, but if you could expand upon that.
Sure. I'm a chartered accountant and I've been Chief Financial Officer at Harvey Hanna since 2007. I'm responsible for underwriting, financing, and accounting for the real estate development that we do. That includes the Coast property and 3 other hotels that we have built and currently operate.
And Mr. Dingwall, the board has been provided with the letter summarizing the financials and the financial information that is on the screen. If you could go through and explain that to the board as well as the public that may be here.
Certainly. The financial information presented here presents the projected operating performance of the hotel and the impact of the unanticipated construction costs. Projected net income for the new hotel was $2.1 million, and the development budget in November 2021, at the time of acquisition of the property, showed total costs of $26.1 million, including construction costs of $7.5 million and a contingency of $1 million. Total financing for the project was $22.5 million, resulting in an equity contribution from the owners of $3.5 million.
Excuse me, sir, didn't you just say that 26 million? Don't you mean 2.6 million?
No, the total development costs are $26.1 million, which is about halfway down or 2/3 down on the page.
Oh, you're
that's
coming down a
including-
column.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
sorry.
including the site development
Yeah, I
costs.
thought you were going across. Excuse me, that
I'm
was my
sorry.
error.
Yeah, but-
Apologize.
So that was our total budgeted development
I
costs.
get it.
at
I
that
get it.
time. Yep. So after the financing, there was an equity contribution at that stage of $3.5 million. After debt service payments of $1.5 million, cash flow was projected at $614,000, which provided a return on equity of approximately 17%. Actual development costs, which you can see in that next column, were $28 million. So actually, they exceeded the budget by $2 million. That included additional construction costs of $2.4 million. You'll see there was price inflation at that time, triggered really by the pandemic, increased the cost of furniture and equipment in the hotel. And then the unanticipated construction delays increased our pre-opening costs, primarily staffing that came on earlier than anticipated and additional interest carry during the construction period. With no further financing available, an additional $2 million was required from the owners. That increased the total equity invested in the project to $5.5 million. In addition, since November of 2021, interest rates have increased dramatically, the prime rate going from 3.25% at that time to 8.5% today. As we stand today, the projected cash flow after debt service is reduced to $296,000, providing a return on equity of only 5.4%, well below the return that a typical investor would require for this type of real estate investment. A further difficulty relates to the ongoing financing of the project. As you can see, our projected debt service coverage ratio is 1.16. Our bank loan requires a minimum requirement coverage of 1.2. So if that can't be achieved, we'd be in default on our loan. Refinancing the property would also be very challenging. Based on current interest rates and standard bank underwriting, I estimate that the amount available on a refinance may fall short of the current loan by up to $1.5 million. The requested 10 rooms is projected to increase net income to $2.7 million and cash flow after debt service to $665,000, providing a return on equity of 10.9%. and debt service coverage is increased to 1.3, so it's back in compliance with the bank loan covenants. The requested variance is sought to help overcome these financial difficulties and help us to continue to finance the project.
Thank you, Mr. Dingwall. And one thing that occurred to me when Mr. Brandt was starting the presentation, he mentioned again that, that the basis for the variance has to be actual, not theoretical. Are those actual numbers that the company has had to live with?
Yeah, these are actual costs that we've incurred, and the owners have contributed an additional $2 million to fund those costs.
Okay, all right. At the 1.16, or the return on equity that is on there, and the financial figures that you just went through, based on those figures, is there sufficient, income or equity available to reinvest in the property or maintain the property in a high-class hotel like it currently is?
Well, the return is certainly lower than our required rate of return. A project such as this, and makes it much more difficult to make those necessary investments.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Dingwall. And just to hold on 1 second, as we have one more little bit of information that I want to go through. There's also some quantifiable economic support for the variance request. The first is that the additional annual lodging tax be roughly $25,000 a year based on the additional 10 rooms. The building permit fees, somewhere around $69,000 or $70,000 for the additional 10 rooms. And the economic impact on the community in general. Mr. DeFonso, who's here, he testified about that last time, but that's around $1 million a year based on every $100 that's spent on a hotel room. So the economic impact of the variance on not just the city and its bottom line, but the community and the businesses here in Rehoboth Beach, those numbers are significant. And Mr. Dingwall, since you're the financial person for the company, do you agree with those numbers?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Dingwall.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay, great. I'm looking at your letter, Vince, of April 25th, second page. Cumulative impact, blah, 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 about third of the way down. You say a typical investor in this type of real estate project requires a return of not less than 15%. But then in bullet 4 below that, you say the requested additional 10 rooms are projected to increase the return on equity to 10.9%. So I'm saying, I'm wondering something. If the typical investor is greater than or equal to 15% and your numbers show 10.9, how are you going to deal with that in the future? How are you moving forward? That's a big difference. That's a 50% change.
Less than would be ideal and would be our normal hurdle for going into such an investment, but it's, it's double the 5.4% that we currently project to earn.
So you have a long-range plan to be able to provide your investors with greater than or equal to 15%?
No, I think based on the numbers, we'd be earning 10.9
right away. But how are you moving forward then, or are you, to a 15 greater than or equal to 15?
We'll certainly do our best to improve operations and maximize performance of the property to get closer to that number. But based on our projections today, we would still be a little short of the 15%.
50% short.
Well, 50%, yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And the fact of the matter is, it's hemorrhaging money now. We get in a lot better place with this variance because it gets us closer to the number we need to be at. With that in mind, too, I see.
Can we continue on that though before we go on to something else?
No, I was going to continue.
Oh, okay,
with that.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I have a question on that same subject.
Mr. Hart, why don't you come on up so you have to be sworn in? And if you would introduce yourself by name and place of residence for the record.
Will Harvey, 400 Alsness Road, Wilmington, Delaware, 19807.
Mr. Harvey, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. To more address Edie's point, and I think it's a valid point, this is not in any way, shape, or form going to make us 100% whole on this project. Certainly, if we were looking at this project, going into this today, we probably would not move forward with this project. what everybody needs to understand right now is that the project is seriously upside down. It's not viable today in the real world. This variance will make things better, but it's not going to make us whole. Now, you know, I'm born and raised in Delaware. Both my parents went to University of Delaware. My mother lives in the town. My uncle lives in the town. We look at this piece of real estate more specifically as a generational type investment. And so while the project is not doing great today, we view over the long run, especially with this variance in place, we will be able to make ourselves whole on a longer timeline, if that helps answer your question.
So your long-range plan is to continue and do better?
Correct. And optimize wherever we can as we go and reinvest in this property.
If you receive the variance?
Well, the variance will help for sure to expedite our ability to get ourselves back into, you know, a position where the project is financially viable. We're able to continuously reinvest, keep a very high standard for, you know, things like the restaurant that Mr. DeFonzo's attested to, room quality. You know, we're looking to build this brand as like the highest, you know, best hotel that maybe exists in the town of Rehoboth and keep that standard very, very high.
Let me approach that from a different point of view, though, Mr. Harvey. If the variance is not granted, then there's got to be other ways to save money and cut costs. What would that mean?
Well, there are, but it's not really what we see as the vision for this property. You know, there's ways in which you can turn the restaurant to a bar, things of that nature. We're interested in a very high standard for this project. We want one of the best restaurants on Rehoboth Avenue. We want one of the best hotels as far as stay on Rehoboth Avenue. And I think in today's world, we've achieved that. Even if from a financial standpoint, it's not operating the best because of really the additional equity requirement from ownership. This isn't going to make us whole on this project. We're not looking for you guys to solve 100% of our problems. This is a big step in turning the project around from a financial standpoint, though.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mark had something, I think.
I did, and it was just along the same lines of what Edie asked. I just want to, I'm not the number person that Edie is, so I just want to be clear in my mind. That's on the same paragraph, development budget anticipated a return of 17.4, actual return on equity is projected to be 5.4. So that capitalization rate, if you will, is not a negative number. But you said you're upside down.
We're upside down from the standpoint of our projected equity in the project versus our actual today.
Right, not what you thought it would be, but you're not losing money.
Well, why don't you describe that 5.4 number? Give some context on that, where, you know, that number needs to be.
To answer your question directly, no, but the project is certainly not producing at the level.
You'd like it to make. I
Correct.
understand that.
Yes.
Hey, Mark, can you pull your microphone closer?
Sorry, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you. That was my question.
I think just with the nature of the real estate investment, you might earn 5.4% on it nowadays having your money in the bank, but you know, the risks involved in a real estate venture would normally
Much
attract
more
a higher rate of return.
I understand. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Dingwall. So that covered Category A under our presentation. Category B is the comprehensive plan compliance. We went through all of this last time, a month ago. I'm not going to reread it or recite that to you. But there's a couple themes that keep coming up that I am going to hit on. Throughout the CDP, we want to improve the quality and integrity of architecture. We want creative redevelopment of properties throughout town, but specifically Rehoboth Avenue. And same thing with adaptive redevelopment of properties throughout town, but specifically Rehoboth Avenue. This variance is necessary to comply with the directions of the CDP. We can't do the adaptive redevelopment, the creative redevelopment, the safe redevelopment, and with this variance, the successful redevelopment without the additional FAR that we're asking for today. And what you have on the screen, just to sort of bring that point home, is a Sandcastle Hotel that's on the bottom right, which was a distressed property that had been there since the 1980s with very little maintenance, if any, that occurred to it. And then what we hope you think is an attractive redevelopment, an adaptive redevelopment of that project. And certainly the quality and integrity of the architecture, which was falling down, by the way, is much improved with the new structure. And then also, again, we went through this before, but it's historic support for the variance. And I know that when you grant a variance for one property doesn't mean you should grant a variance for another property. We've had 2 hotels that have achieved variances purely on theoretical basis. Here we have an actual basis based on actual financial information. But in prior ones, the board has said that a FAR variance is appropriate when there's an exceptional practical difficulty of constructing an architecturally pleasing, CDB-compliant mixed-use hotel complex with underground parking given the economic challenges stemming from the substantial investment required. Basically what the board was saying, that if you have a legitimate cost that you incurred in designing a hotel or any property, that can be the basis for a variance. We didn't have parking, we have other things, but it's cost, and that's one of the primary drivers of this variance is the cost of complying with bringing this hotel into 2024, but also make it safe and code compliant. The board also already decided that evidence of desired or promoted development characteristics contained within the CDP is a relevant consideration in the context of the applicant's efforts to make normal improvements to the property. Again, the CDP talks about improving the quality and integrity of the structure, the creative redevelopment of the structure, and the adaptive redevelopment of the structure. All those things we comply with. The Belhaven Superior Court decision, in the Superior Court, it cited the Supreme Court that the inability to improve one's business or to stay competitive as a result of area limitations may qualify as a legitimate exceptional practical difficulty that would justify granting a variance. In other words, the court confirmed that economics can be the basis for a variance, and also the ability or the desire to improve your operational abilities as a hotel. We heard from Mr. DeFonso last time that to stay competitive within the Rehoboth Beach marketplace for a hotel, we had to do some upgrades, which we've done. That's a basis for granting this variance. The Superior Court also said that exceptional practical difficulties can exist where the requested dimensional change is minimal and the harm to the applicant if the variance is denied will be greater than the probable effect on the neighboring properties if the variance is granted. That's the balancing test. Here, on the one hand, we have no adverse impact on the neighborhood at all. We don't have any evidence to that whatsoever in this case, versus we have the actual economic harm to the applicant if the variance is not granted. And then finally, as I mentioned, the Belhaven Superior Court decision said that economics and cost of construction can be the basis for a variance. So Rehoboth Hotel LLC satisfies each one of those items that have been laid out previously in Board of Adjustment cases, including Superior Court decisions on Board of Adjustment cases. With that, brings us to the conclusion, and I just want to summarize again, quick check, because that's what we start with, that's what we finish with. All these are satisfied. The nature of the zone where the property lies, it's commercial, check. The character of the immediate vicinity and the uses contained therein. This is less intensive than everything else around this property, check. Whether if the restriction upon the applicant's property were removed, such a removal would seriously affect such neighboring properties and uses. Again, there's zero evidence that we'd have an adverse impact on the neighboring properties. And then fourth and final one, the exceptional practical difficulty standard. We have the economics of fixing all the unforeseen issues. We have the need to stay competitive, and we have the need in your comprehensive plan to improve the quality and integrity of the architecture, the adaptive redevelopment of this rundown property, the creative redevelopment of this rundown property, the safe redevelopment of this rundown property, and with this variance, the successful redevelopment of this rundown property. So with that, we've complied with each and every one of those quick check factors, so we would ask that you approve the variance application before you. So thank you very much for your time over 2 hearings.
Thank you.
And we're available for any further questions.
Let's start with questions. We'll work our way over. Mark.
On quick check number 3, does not negatively impact surrounding properties. I have to push back a little bit and say, well, what about the hotels that are adjacent to you? aren't they going to lose business from your 10 rooms that you add? Isn't that 10 rooms less for them? Don't I have to consider the financial impact to the neighbors also?
The answer to that is no, because none of those hotels have showed up in this hearing and placed on the record that they will be adversely impacted. So you are not allowed to assume that, you know, there might be an adverse impact when there's not anything in the record that supports that. I don't mean to be snarky about that, but that's, you know, this is all based on the record, so.
That was my
Edie?
question.
Oh, sure. Would you be asking for this variance if your original, I'm looking at the financials that we were looking at, if the original financials and the work that had to be done matched what you thought? I mean, would the company be asking for a variance?
I'm not sure I understand the
Okay.
question, if you could restate that.
You have your financial list. Just a minute, I just moved those. Sorry, I just
I just want to
moved.
make sure that we're answering the question that you're
Sure,
asking.
of course, and I do appreciate that. You had, the first column was what you projected, and then the third one, as I recall, was what was actually spent. And so what I'm asking is, if your contingency budget and so forth that you did set aside for unforeseen construction issues had covered what you had, and if your budgeted did match the actual, would you be asking for this variance?
I would say, as we stand here today, no, but basically, we had always planned on this being a 60-room hotel. We had, met with Matt and gone through a lot of notes to understand the fact that it was already a pre-existing non-conforming structure, and we wanted to make sure we had good documentation as to exactly what we were buying, to make sure that we didn't come back later and have any issues with the town and lose room count. But it was always our plan going in to build this out by right based on what we had bought.
But you had 60 rooms. You're asking for the 10 more to make
We're asking
70.
yes, we're asking for 10 more now because of the financial costs. We need to add additional revenue to offset that cost.
Was the question, if you knew it would cost as much as it ended up costing, would you
No.
have done the deal? Oh.
No, that's not,
No,
that may be coming.
I think what you're asking is, had we met our budget
Yes,
on the 60 rooms,
or
would-
been much closer.
or been much closer, would we be here today? I think the answer is no.
Okay, that was my bottom line question for that. Has the company ever been in this type of situation before? And what did you do? What did you do?
I'm not going to say that we've never been upside down on a project before. This is certainly maybe an outsider in the grand scheme. We've done a bunch of other projects, substantially similar to this. The hotel we built in Lewis, as an example, much closer to budget. This is, whenever you're doing a redevelopment, so to speak, of an old building, it always seems to be a lot harder. There's a lot more you don't know than maybe like a greenfield site where it's like, okay, there's just a piece of land and we're going to go build a building now. So again, every project has its challenges, but this one was certainly above and beyond what was expected.
The unknown unknowns.
Yes, yeah, very much so with this.
And then I have a couple more. Should I just continue?
Continue.
Okay. I'm looking at the due diligence reports that you were kind enough to furnish since March. And I guess I keep going back to something that was brought up last month, which was, where were the warning bells? If I look at the McIntosh report and the other one as well, why buy a 40-year-old hotel in a humid salt air environment where you knew, I mean, you folks talked to us last month about, you knew it hadn't had any maintenance. You knew it, they hadn't had any, and as I recall, one statement you made was that a verbal statement was that the owner proudly told you he'd never change the mattresses. And so, I mean, that to me, I mean, that's only one piece. I know that's not structural, that's F&F. But so again, why would you go into buying a 40-year-old hotel in those conditions with no maintenance, without extensive, deep inspections? I see that you had some inspections, but, I mean, for instance, no conditional fresh air anywhere or exhaust system, anywhere. Woo! A lot of current owner states this, that the inspector said in one letter or the other, maybe both. The current owner states that this is XYZ, rather than being able to go in the walls.
Yeah.
I can't read one section, particularly of the MEP report, without hearing warning bells going off on every paragraph. So I don't understand. I don't understand how such a smart and widespread company can go into something like this and have so many unknowns.
Understood. And I think.
And I'm not trying to make you be
No.
defensive or feel
It's
badly.
a
I'm
fair-
trying to understand.
So I would say that, again, projects like this, where you're going into an existing structure, especially one, this building was maybe 3 different buildings that had kind of been hodgepodge together over the years. For better, for worse, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, we relied on the experts on this one to kind of tell us what they saw and what they think. And certainly not everything that's in this, most of what was in this report we accounted for with our contingency, at least in our own minds. What wasn't in these reports was some of what we showed you the pictures of. But there was no real, it's, and I know it's a little bit amazing, but there was almost no real visible means to throw a red flag and say, hey guys, you might have a bigger problem here that you really need to dig in. And the experts really didn't identify anything that was overly glaring about the structure. We made some bad assumptions, I guess, with that, and just assumed that, you know, these were as good as it's going to get. And we moved forward. We were comfortable with the numbers. I mean, we still projected a 17% return if that contingency was completely exhausted. The deal made sense, you know. Obviously, this one warranted far more inspection. I'll say that we've bought other properties with similar inspections. You know, for instance, Crosswinds down the street. But we've made some changes internally, I'll say, and we're digging in a little bit deeper going forward. This one certainly was far and away the worst we've ever seen as far as, you know, bringing the experts in, having them tell you what they think, relying on what they tell you, just based on visuals, which is a standard practice. And then when we actually got to construction, it was like, wow, you know, and did we do the best job possible? Probably not. Could we have done more? Probably, but we are where we are at this point. You know, so it's not ideal, certainly.
A couple follow-up questions on that, you know, just time frame wise, I want this on the record. The hotel and Conch Island, everything, it was fully operational at the time.
Yeah, they were running an operation at the time. So, I mean, that played into, you know, creating more difficulties in access and things of that nature.
And then the other question is, to Ms. Heron's point, everything that was listed, though, in these reports was either accounted for in the budget.
It was
or
built
in
into the budget, yes.
in the contingency.
Yes.
So,
We took these reports and we did an exercise with our builder, and we added, you know, significant dollars to the budget, $1 million in contingency, to cover off what we thought we would find, plus maybe some more stuff that maybe we didn't expect along the way, but certainly, you know, we didn't expect to find $2 million worth of additional costs in this building.
And I guess along that same lines, you didn't tear it down. I'm sorry, you didn't tear it down because you'd have to go back to the 2.0 FAR, correct?
So we would have to go back into the compliance with the code for sure. There's pluses and minuses that we could argue with that, but really at this point, we were into the project. You know, we had permits pulled, we had financing in place, we had deadlines to meet, we had a season that was coming. We ultimately missed the season, which certainly didn't help us with driving revenues. But we were into it at that point. I mean, we had the building, you know, torn apart, and we were spending money, you know.
In the middle of the season.
This was,
I might know.
this was a little earlier than that, but once we got into the thick of it, yeah, unfortunately, we did have to do demolition. It just wasn't safe to leave that building standing.
You've answered the questions that I had. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'm going to go to my questions here. During renovation, after it was discovered the condition of the building, at what point in time was any construction done in such a way that would enable a future increase in building size? In other words, were any of the cost overruns that you incurred due to making the building structurally able to increase it for the future, for this variance? In other words, it's not my point or the board's point of how you build it. You overbuild it, certainly do. But if you added a different gauge steel or whatever, did that bring that overrun increase? In other words, were you prepping for this variance?
Correct. So it's a fair question. And the answer is yes, we were at that point in time. At that point in time, we were recognizing that costs were seriously overrunning. We were $1 million plus in the hole at that point with another $900,000 staring us in the face. And we sat, as a team and said, okay, guys, we're going to have to get through this, number one, but let's think creatively here. How can we maybe dig ourselves out of this hole after the fact? And one way to do it is a variance request for additional rooms. And maybe to answer your question more pointedly, we did an analysis expecting maybe you guys would ask this question. We spent about $100,000 additional to beef up the structure of this so that we could potentially move forward with a variance request without having to negatively impact the operations of the hotel once we got to that point. But that's, in the grand scheme, that $100,000 that we spent against the $2 million that, that was a calculated risk in our mind.
Kind of guess that with the cost that you sunk into this, with the additional 2 rooms, it doesn't sound like, based on just cost alone, that you're going to rip the whole front off and go in structurally and do that again.
No.
Okay. I did know, we did see and we did hear about the bank requiring 1.2. I had to go look it up on Investopedia. It's 1.25 is what the banks say. It would have been nice if you would have brought a letter from the bank to state that as proof, as evidence to say, we're going to be in default from that. But
that's a sensitive document. I can appreciate your ask.
Understood. Okay. It's just,
And let me respond to that real quick, because that's come up whether we provided the economic information or not on this one. And that was a calculated decision on our behalf. And I'll tell you, there was a prior variance application that was totally theoretical. And for the same reasons, they decided they did not want to supply confidential financial information beforehand. Same thing with banking information. Now, this is public, but it also affects their business operations. I would ask, and I would ask Mr. Townsend to maybe instruct you all, not to consider that in a disfavorable light, because again, that's sensitive information. We based it on prior presentations to the board, and we've disclosed it all to you.
And I don't, because you are on record as saying 1.2. So I'm fine with that. Let's see. I was looking at I'm going to get into the DSC or DCS or DSCR on this. Back in March, we heard Mr. DeFenzo, and if he wants to come up and speak to this, say occupancy was at 95%. And I would like clarification on that, because the numbers show 67. And if I take that up to 95, you're looking good. You're like at 1.48.
So Vince
if you
was
could explain
Vince was speaking to in season, I believe.
Okay.
Now, certainly this is a seasonal property. It's trending, I think he spoke to, it's trending more towards a year round, but certainly in January and February, our occupancy rates are nowhere near 90%. So
okay,
it's
just
an
want
average.
that on the record for clarification, because he did state that in March. Okay.
I would just like to add something too. So that percentage that you see, the 67% is stabilized for the whole year, and that's stabilized, which projects year 3. Our budget for 2024, the current year, shows 64% occupancy.
Okay. Okay. And this will sound crazy, but no loans from the bank were came through COVID relief, they're forgiven, or
No,
you're
this
all
is
straight bank loan, right?
Yeah, the additional
Okay.
$1.92 million that we're talking about, this came out of our pockets.
Okay, thank you. They were my questions. Thank you.
I just wanted to say how much I appreciate Mr. Harvey's honesty. That
You're
doesn't
welcome.
often happen. I mean, he said, you know, we're making 10.9, but we really need to make 15. I'm missing decimal points probably. No one said that before, and I greatly appreciate it. It's refreshing, frankly.
Go back to the McIntosh report. It's one page and a couple of lines for $26 million. You know, I got longer reports when I bought a house for like a tenth of that. So really just talk to us, is that really what is standard in commercial real estate for a $25 million project to get a page and a couple of lines? And the MAP report, as Edie said, is quite comprehensive and frankly frightening, to be very honest, that we had a property that bad operating right up to the time you guys took it over.
Yeah,
But the other report says good condition. It's a page long, and you guys are making a $25 million investment.
Yeah, so McIntosh's report, I think, was more pointed at large-scale structural issues that were visible, and not necessarily, you know, so much. I mean, there's nitty-gritty stuff in here, but they were looking at really the bigger ticket items, and they didn't identify any of those really big ticket items in that initial report.
And you guys were okay with, and
No, we're not okay with that at this point. No, like I said, I mean, we've made some tweaks into
tweaks.
a few tweaks.
You're going to undercut the credibility thing that you just worked so hard to get.
Yeah, and no, McIntosh, I mean, in fairness, we have a good relationship with them. We've done business with them for a lot of years. I'm not going to say that, you know, they got this one right or wrong. It was based on a visual inspection that they did for us. This building is kind of an anomaly. You know, once we started tearing, it just kept giving. You know, it's nothing against them. The report is what it is, and obviously we're making internal tweaks to really push for more going forward. You know, this project to some extent, even, you know, for us, was a learning experience. You know.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Okay. Yeah, I had a couple of questions. Just one, and I don't know, in the FAR, is the parking included? I would assume it's not.
So certain pieces are and certain pieces aren't.
Okay.
Covered.
Yeah, we went through that with Mr. Janis.
Yeah.
We had that exactly right.
So the open air parts on the deck are not. Everything else is.
Okay, because I noticed that on the Second Street side, I guess, some of that parking is partially underground.
Correct. The whole underground deck is not. On the second floor deck, everything that has cover with the building over top of it is included. And it's something like a little under 8,000 square feet total in there. But then there's the two areas outside of that are open air. Those are not.
And the underground is not.
Correct.
Okay, because no one mentioned underground parking before, but I was pretty sure there was.
Yeah, when you come in off
And-
Second Street, it
Right.
drops down.
Yeah, it drops
Yeah.
down.
Yep.
I didn't know how far underground you had to go for it to count as underground. I mean,
It's just if you are driving in or out a ramp, then it's underground.
okay. So that the FAR does not include that underground parking.
Correct.
Okay, so that's the code now. It would have when it was built, correct?
I don't think there was FAR when it was built.
Yeah, so when it was built, it was
Well,
not.
there's always been a little FAR here, you know.
Really what they did was they built the second floor deck with cover, and that in today's world you would not normally do. You would try to put all the parking underground as much as you could, and anything you couldn't squeeze on the site underground, you would leave open air so it didn't count against your building FAR.
Okay, because I know that many of the hotels, as Vince well knows, feel like they need a larger FAR, even though underground parking isn't counted because underground parking is expensive to build.
Correct. Underground parking has significant costs associated with it.
And then you answer my question about parking and numbers, that there is no, so if you build 10 additional rooms, then you have the 10, whatever the code.
Correct. We
counts.
have parking to accommodate those rooms today.
Okay, without going into the fire hall or anything like that.
Correct.
And that was part of, there was the question, I forget who asked it, why we stopped at, those numbers and to get all the way to 15. Part of it was the constraints we had with the number of parking,
Okay, and then is there any room on the first floor to add any of the rooms you want to add, or they all have to be on the third?
No, at this point, the hotel is pretty much a built-out, stabilized property, and we're really trying to limit this addition in a way that is not going to negatively impact the operation of the hotel. So really, everything that exists today is pretty much built out as it's going to be long-term.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is that it? Vince, based on our questions, is there any other input from you to us?
No, I don't think so at this point.
Okay, at this point, we're going to close down. Thank you.
We're going to hear
Thank you, everybody.
if there is.
I had asked before, there was no one who joined us. Are you here to speak on this?
Oh, I thought they raised their hands.
No, they're
You're
speaking on
referring
their
to the
case.
next case. Okay, all right.
Their case. All right, so we will close down the public portion, and now the board will discuss this case. And today, I'd like to go through each of us by quick check factor. We'll talk about quick check factor number 1, agree, disagree, have a conversation on that, and then we'll move on 2, 3, and 4. So is there, anyone on the board has any issue with quick check factor number 1?
I do not.
Mark?
All right, no.
No.
We're talking about the nature of the
nature.
location.
Yeah,
No.
I do not either. So, okay, number 2?
Yeah, that was the zoning district, and the second
Yeah.
consideration is the nature of the and character of the vicinity.
I do, in the effect that if you actually look at the comprehensive plan, on the very first paragraph of chapter 1 talks about scale, and this certainly would affect scale, and I think that's something we have to consider. That's why we have a FAR, is because we have a scale.
Did you think, you're saying it adversely affects the scale of the Rehoboth?
Certainly, it's bigger than 2.0, so anything bigger than 2.0 adversely affects the scale.
Okay. Conversation, Edie, Dan, Bill?
No, I'm fine.
Well, I don't think that, I think there can be examples of structures that have the same bulk as one another, but different FARs. So FAR has more to do, I think, with density. And in some cases, it has more to do with density than it has to do with bulk. It can have, it can be a bulk issue, but it doesn't have to be a bulk issue.
And I would say the sandcastle probably had larger bulk than the proposed addition here, something for us to consider. It was higher, right?
And we do have 3-story hotels. This is not 5, 6 stories in terms of, if you talk, it depends on how you define scale. To me, scale is more visual, too high, but it's bulk, right?
It's bulk. Mark, practically, I think it was in the 70s or early 80s.
Dan, your mind.
I'm sorry, in the 70s or early 80s, one of the things that Norm Chagru, who is no longer with us, pointed out was that if we didn't change some of the ordinances in Rehoboth, that we would end up with a rectangular canyon on on Rehoboth Avenue, because everything, in order to get as much as they wanted. So I'm not sure if that's bulk or scale, but it's an interesting thought because, in fact, it's a rectangle, and that's kind of what everybody is building because you can get the most stuff, whatever, in a rectangle.
But this, to me, is an architecturally interesting approach. So I don't have anything against the second quick check factor for this case,
Okay.
if that's what you're asking.
Right, I wanted to go through these by each quick check factor, and I have no issues with number 2.
No.
Did you? Bill?
No.
Okay, on that one. Okay, number 3, the implications of approving the variance request.
Well, as I mentioned during our discussion earlier, that it does have an effect on the neighboring properties that are competing with it. It's 10 more rooms.
As Mr. Robbins said, we've not heard from any of them.
No, we have not. Right.
There's often an argument with hotels, if you have several good ones nearby, it actually helps them all. because then people start thinking about coming, and then they call each one to see if it's available. So I don't think I would assume that adding 10 more rooms was necessarily going to hurt the other hotels, and they have not been here. And frankly, the other ones the new ones that have been approved are this size or larger by quite a bit, one of them. So at least I would not assume, without hearing from people, that I'm not sure whether it would qualify as a serious imposition, even if they were here, but they're not.
Yeah, and they would have had 6 weeks to tell us, any of us, anytime, something in a negative vein or a positive vein, either one, from the time it was originally posted in early to mid-March until today.
And without commenting on the merits of that contention, I do think it would be dangerous to draw a conclusion like that absent any support in the record.
Yeah, Jan, anything?
No.
Yeah, and on number 3, for me, I do agree there's no adverse effect, but there's an implication that we're now starting to see a trend in the city. I cannot hold this against you, so it's just a trend the board is seeing. This is the 3rd hotel in a row, commercial, that is asking for an increase. So it's not an adverse effect in my mind to the buildings surrounding it, but for the city overall, it's an implication that we're starting to see a trend here. And let's move on to number 4, the one we always have great discussions on, whether denial of the variance would create unnecessary hardship or exceptional practical difficulty for the owner in relation to the owner's efforts to normal improvements to the property. I have a lot I've written down on this, but again, I'm going to start with Mark.
All right. It is a hard decision. I mean, this particular question is the hardest one. My question is this a need? Is this a need or is this a want? Did they make this problem themselves? Was this a plan all along because we only had, they needed a bigger hotel and we'll go halfway, then we'll come for variance on the rest of the way? There's a lot of things in my mind that are going around. I'm happy that they're making 5%. I know they'd like to make 15, but they're not losing 5. So I'm looking at that. And I'm interested to hear what the rest of you have to say.
Okay.
Edie?
Good, Edie.
Okay.
Yep. We're going around.
Well, I wrote this, as notes before I came here, this part. They're still asking us in a way to cover, pay for, whatever, a seeming lack, in my view, of true due diligence of this level of commitment, financial commitment, with these as Bill said, one-page review. I'm not sure in-room wellness Peloton bikes are necessary. I don't know if we should consider granting this request with conditions and what those conditions or condition might be. I believe everything that they have had to go through. I don't think that's the question. It's why did they have to go through it, and who caused them to go through it, and what our need, I should use the word need, what our need is to cover anything that was their responsibility. Where does the responsibility lie? I guess that's where I fall, and I go this way and this way and this way and this way. That's what I have at this point to say.
Okay.
May I?
Yeah, go ahead, Fred.
So there is a concept of whether the harm that is alleged is self-imposed to one degree or another. And the courts have wrestled with that. And certain jurisdictions have, and we're not one of them, but certain jurisdictions have code provisions that say that you've got to clear that hurdle, that you cannot be responsible for your own difficulties. But that is not applicable, or that concept is not applicable to this board. So this jurisdiction does not, or should not, you as members should not be asking yourselves to what degree is are the applicant's exceptional practical difficulties self-imposed? And if they are self-imposed, that they're somehow disqualified. Now, an example where you would hold somebody, you would conclude that their exceptional practical difficulties are not truly exceptional, would be if they pulled a permit to build a structure and then didn't build it where they said they were going to build it, or built a larger building than they requested permission for, and acted in a manner which was inconsistent with the permit requirement to their own detriment. If that were to happen, then you would conclude that they don't, if their exceptional practical difficulties, it's going to be so costly for me to fix what I have tried to get away with and didn't, then that's a losing argument, I think, for the board. That does not justify a finding of an exceptional practical difficulty. But in this case, I think we could spend a lot of time trying to find fault, but it wouldn't change whether or not the applicant is confronted with an exceptional practical difficulty. And courts have said specifically that this argument about whether you find yourself in a self-imposed difficulty defeats your application, and they've said that it does not.
The courts have said that that's not a valid reason for turning down an application?
Right.
Okay.
So again, just to repeat, what you're saying is, even if someone caused their own difficulty, you're saying that that is not anything we can consider? I want to get right to what you're telling us.
You can consider it, but there is a degree of self-imposition in every application that comes to you. Every decision that's made, whether you're going to operate a sandwich shop or a hotel at a site, requires some exercise of discretion. And once that exercise is done, it would not be fair to say that to the hotelier that they can't have a variance because they should be selling sandwiches instead of hotel rooms or something. So
I see.
there are umpteen numbers of decisions that are made that landed us where we are today, and I don't think it's the board's place to justify every one of those decisions in order to find that any additional relief is appropriate. And none of that is meant to say that the applicant has or hasn't met the standard. I'm just asking you to be cautious in terms of how you justify the decision that you make.
Okay, thank you, Fred. Honestly, we'll go on record. This has been one of the most difficult cases for me, hearing this in the information. And a lot of it, again, thank you for supplying the financial information, your honesty. I really focused in on the DSCR. When I heard in March we were 95% occupancy, I said, this is great. It's just going to take a little bit longer to recover all those costs. You don't need 10, you don't need 10 rooms. But you're on record saying, no, it's averaged out 67, now 6 to 64.
What is the average hotel in Rehoboth in the year-round?
I do not know the average.
I don't either.
Rehoboth Beach.
I mean, that may be standard.
But for their case, to where I'm driving at is the bank, the loan. So they're on record as saying if they go below 1.2, they're in default, therefore.
But they're also on record as saying they're making 10.5% return on their equity. That's not,
No, that's what they plan to.
10.9.
no, they planned
But they're
15 point something.
but they're
and
currently-
getting 10
No,
point
5.
something.
No, they're saying that
No.
they're currently getting 5.
They'll get 10.9 if
Right.
if the 10-room variance
Good
is
as putting is in the bank, in the CD from the bank,
No,
right?
the-
5.4.
The current, my understanding is it's 5.4 currently, and if you get the variance, it would be 10.9.
Right. Right.
Projected to be 10.9.
Thank you. So I had difficulty that's been clarified. I viewed that when you opened early, like you were doing construction during season, I said, okay, that's a benefit to the owner here. You made more profit earlier, but now I understand from you saying, sir, that it was a safety hazard. So, you know, that I get now. So I have no issue with that. I did ask about your overbuilding, not that it weighs how much you overbuild, that's up to you, and I just wanted to know how much did it contribute? 100K, that in my mind is not significant, so it wasn't the main driver for that. Just a commentary, I mean, you guys have done a great job, but I think you do understand that we cannot reward for such a this board cannot do reward somebody for that. It has to be proven to us that the financials are where you're driving at. The financials are the exceptional practical difficulty. And believing this number that you submitted, I'm leaning that, this DSCR and this return on equity are pretty low, and the worst one being the DSCR if you would be in default of the bank loan. And I do see the increase as minimal in my mind, Mark, structure-wise, bulk. I don't see that as much. The structure is underneath. I'm leaning more in my mind that it's a minimal kind of addition. And again, I had to look up DSCR, and like you guys convinced me. Reading it, it's 1.25 for banks. You guys are, I guess, have a more favorable bank, letting you go at 1.2. So again, very, very difficult in my mind in this decision with this one.
Well, I would say, I tend to agree with Edie, and Mark, in the sense that, Lord, if I had gotten a report from somebody on a house I was buying, I would have, it was an incomplete report in every way, shape, or form. And you did say that you have tweaked, and we all said tweaked. I hope you did more than just tweak your relationship with them, because otherwise, I have to, there's certain things I agree. I feel very strongly that it's not up to us to bail you out. But Fred is telling me that, that's not a consideration. So on the plus side, I think it's just an unobtrusive addition. And in the neighborhood is, it's a commercial neighborhood. And so I don't have a problem with what you're doing. I have a problem with why you're doing it. And that's how I'm feeling, about this, so.
I think I'm convinced on the return on equity. You can't do a commercial project for 5%. Certainly 15 to 17 is what normally folks are going to be looking for. So the 10, as they said, is going to be making the best of a bad situation. I heard Fred. I made my own comment on the adequacy of the report. Maybe $1 million was sufficient given the fact that you knew it was an older building. I've thought a little bit about where on a theoretical of where I'd be if you were coming here in the middle of the project and said, look what we found and we need another 10 rooms. My instinct is we would say we would grant, at least my instinct is I would grant it. If they had opened it up that summer and said, look what we found, there is no way we can make this thing work without another 10 rooms, and came here in an emergency, I sort of wonder whether we wouldn't say, it's a big improvement for the city. Nobody is going to go and do that for 5% return, since you can give that to Schwab and get your 5%. And so I'm sort of thinking that, just on your points, Jan, that if that whether it's of their own making or not, it's real. They've taken what Matt was a fire hazard from what the other report, which the MEP report was pretty good, and eliminated what was a real risk for the city of having next to City Hall a building that was a fire hazard, which is frightening. Unless it was near the fire department.
It was right next to
the fire department. I know that.
At least they didn't have to go far.
I thought about that too. But we'll get the fire department in here complaining about my comments.
Bring a longer hose, right?
So I think that they meet the exceptional practical difficulty for what they ended up facing, both in terms of the increased cost and where interest rates are today in terms of anybody who's going to do a commercial building in this town of, frankly, anywhere is going to need in the range of 15% or more, given where interest rates are. So I think they meet it in my own view.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just
Any-
add that-
Go ahead, Mark.
I think what I hate is that we're 2.3 to start with, and we're going to 2.7. We started with a violation, and we made it a worse violation. That's what bugs me the most.
We've had this discussion with Fred previously, and I remember the first time I faced this on this board of saying, well, why don't we just raise the code?
Right.
Because you can't do commercial buildings, as we're seeing, with costs in 2.0, and none of the hotels are doing it. Fred's answer was, that's part of why you have variances, that the state has said, we are here to deal with exceptional practical difficulty. And I think what we're seeing here and in the Bellhaven decision is a recognition that part of our job is to deal with the reality of the economic returns. So I hear it, but
But we cannot lean into what the commissioner should do as far as code. So we are, I don't want to use the word handcuff, but we have to apply and live by, and you guys know this, only what is in that code, and then ask the applicants to.
Well, the commissioners did change the code, and they changed the code to make underground parking not part of the FAR. So they did change the code. So previously, underground parking counted in your FAR. So they did change the code. It didn't make any difference because the argument now is, oh, underground parking is so expensive that we need more rooms to cover it. So they didn't have that argument before. So it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But
No, please
I'm
continue,
finished. Go
Jan.
ahead.
Okay. I have a question for our group here. If we are even considering granting this variance, are there conditions or is there a condition we would want to place on the granting of the variance? Is there anything about it that would require us to?
I would just ask, I would presume that because they have brought plans, et cetera, that the variance should be conditioned on the fact, as it was in the Grotto Hotel, I don't know what the name of that hotel is, but for whatever, is that it'd be built exactly as we were shown. If it's not built how we're shown, then what's the point? Then that's not. We all commented about how much we liked it and that it was unobtrusive and it fit in and it balanced the rectangular out. But if you don't build that, if you get a variance to add,
I would like to add that, because as we've learned now in the Bellhaven is they've dropped it down to one underground level, but they're still carrying a FAR of 3.0.
Yeah, over the
So
top.
they're walking.
vote for that, remember?
And they are, so I like the idea of a condition, as seen, as submitted, as proposed. And I don't know if you guys would have any issues with
Matt,
that.
how do you feel about that, Matt?
Yeah.
Obviously, I would rely on you guys to make that recommendation, and of course, we would enforce it accordingly. So it's totally up to your right, as Mr. Townsend has probably informed you or advised you, that, not often or not too rarely are approvals without parameters, obviously.
So one of the discussions we had was, I think one of the justifications for the FAR that was presented was they wanted to build larger rooms than they currently have. They wanted to add a larger set of rooms. So if we were to approve this FAR without any conditions, and a plan came back in saying that they wanted to add 15 rooms instead of 10, is 10 the number?
We can't do
But
more than that 'cause of
parking
parking.
would
Right.
limit.
Okay,
them.
but just,
Right.
let's say parking wasn't
Okay.
an issue, just in theory, if parking wasn't an issue, would you look to our decision or to the record and say, well, it's very clear that the justification for the variance was a desire to add larger rooms to appeal to this new demand versus the smaller rooms, and we can't issue a permit in that instance because the decision was based on the record that was made, based on the submissions that were made, and you can't make a wholesale change like that.
So my world exists solely in code compliance. If there's no condition set, I'm reviewing for code compliance across the board. So it would be the minimum size of a room. Does that room then have the parking that goes along with it? Is it, pardon here, is it floor area ratio compliant? Is it zoning compliant? That's the stuff that I'm looking for, not necessarily, well, is this room too small or too big to live in, to dwell in?
So if this group were to approve a FAR variance, it would be, if it was based on these considerations, it would be wise of the group then to impose a room limitation as a condition.
So first, they are already constrained because of their parking, and you can't get parking on that site, right? But second, if you made a recommendation or a condition set for the variance given, I obviously would act on that condition set.
Because without a condition, essentially what we'd be saying is you have 7,608 square feet
Exactly.
to use any way you want.
Right.
And that's what we're seeing in the Bellhaven now, you know?
Right,
They reduced the number of rooms.
Right, they did, correct.
but still. So, but the condition, a condition or set of conditions, whatever we might come up with, would put a constraint on that 7,608. Is that correct?
Yes, if you set a
From your view?
correct, if you set a condition for this approval, I would obviously be held to that condition.
I see. Thank you.
So
Mark, you're not going to put it on the color?
Oh, I'm fine with the color, no.
Sorry.
And I don't care if they have Pelotons in a room or not, but I do care that the location is where we're seeing it. I mean, how they divide up that location
Like
into
the
10
facade
rooms
looks the
is
same,
the
no?
facade.
Yeah.
Thank you, better word. The
Not the
facade is
colors,
the
but
same.
the facade.
Don't care what color it
Right.
is. And I don't care what's in the room, you know, giving it's a hotel room, but I think the facade needs to be, I mean, I wouldn't impose architectural standards on the architect, but the facade needs to be the facade that we have seen.
And
Is
we
that
totally
reasonable?
understand that, yeah, because that's so much of what we talked about, you know, so in terms of the neighborhood and everything else.
Okay, anyone want to make a motion?
So in accordance with the
go ahead.
plans submitted, do we need, would that,
Well, I want to hear that in the motion, but go
Yeah,
ahead.
right,
Yeah,
right, right.
Yeah.
Who
So,
makes better motions, or?
I will move to grant the variance as requested, and that the construction shall be substantially similar to what has been presented to the board today.
I'll second that.
okay, let's start. I'm going to go with you, Mark, as I usually do, on your
Yes.
thoughts.
Yes, well,
And
this is
vote.
this is a hard one. This was a difficult one. I'm torn between, was this planned all along, or is it something that really came up? And I think it's something that just came up. So I'm willing to vote in favor of it, based on the 3 quick checks, and it appears that they have met the criteria of all 4.
Oh, okay, all four.
Well, 3
Okay.
that I felt good about.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Edie?
I'll vote for the, to grant the variance with the condition as stated by Bill. The first 3, as we said, the first 3 quick check factors, I think are no-brainers. They're all yes, yes, yes. The 4th one is the one that we've all been struggling with now for 6 weeks, right? Since we first heard about the case and have reviewed the materials over and over and heard the presentations. But in balance, I think that hotel, as we see it, I like Jan's idea of make the facade look as much like that as possible. But that hotel is a bonus to our city. Comparing it to the Sandcastle and what it wasn't, which we found out a lot about what it wasn't. There's just no comparison. And so having a viable, attractive business at that location for our city is a positive step, a safe one, is a positive step for the city. And I think it's these people have done a good job in presenting their case. There's still some murky things here, but we'll never get past all of them, but I can support it.
Okay, and you're okay with Bill's word of substantial, indicating substantially similar to, you're okay
Yeah,
with that?
I'd say that that's true. I like Jan's facade thing, but doesn't have to be exactly.
Going to amend it to have a facade.
I'm not trying to make Bill make his.
Dan, your vote, please?
I'm supporting it for all the reasons said. Like Edie, I also have some issues, but I truly appreciate Mr. Harvey's really frank and honest comments. That rarely happens.
Thank you. Bill?
Yeah, I believe that all 4 quick check factors have been met, and for the reasons that I've stated previously, I support the motion
Okay.
made.
Thank you. That's 4. And I also vote in the affirmative to the motion for approval of the variance. And my reasons are the financials, the return on equity, the DSCR that was also incurred because of all the hardships in, once they got underway in construction. So with that, it's 5-0 in favor. Thank you. It's a beautiful hotel. Thank
And
you.
hopefully the facade. I think they got the message.
Thank you, everyone. Can
Thank
we
you,
take a 5-minute break and we'll get to you guys. Thank you.
Oh, I know, yeah. Yeah, thanks for helping me.
You know.
Okay, continuing on, let's move into our new business. As stated earlier, we have one new case on the calendar. I will not go over, unless you want me to, all the quick check factors, but we'll be discussing them. Okay. We recognize the same quick check factors that we applied in the first case will be applied to your case for an area variance. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt to give the building inspector's report.
Good afternoon. You are still the Board of Adjustment, and it is still Monday. Before you today is case number 0324-03. 53 Sussex Street is our address for this property. The applicant is Michael Greger and John Pantalo. Thank you. 812 South Avenue, Unit H9, Sicane, PA 19018. The owners are the same. The applicant seeks relief from the following: 270-21B, floor area ratio 1 in the RN1, in the R1S ... The code actually goes on for quite some time there. The nature of the request is as follows. The applicant is seeking a variance to section 270-21B, floor area ratio, to allow an increase of 293 square feet for a proposed new single-family dwelling to be constructed on the property. The property is located at 54 Sussex Street, Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, 19971, and is
Excuse
situated...
me, Matt, it's 53.
53 Sussex.
53 Sussex.
That's what I said.
No, it's 54 as written.
Oh, I'm sorry. 53 Sussex.
Make sure the
Thank
record's
you.
correct. Make sure the correct record's correct.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Otherwise, you have to move.
I'm going to interest you in a change of address.
Thank you.
Thank you. And is situated in the R1 residential district. The property is listed in Sussex County records as tax map number 334-14.17-46.00. The property is a rectangular-shaped parcel measuring 49.66 feet by 84 feet, with a total of 4,172 square feet as shown on a survey provided by Foresight Services dated April 5th, 2023. Background information is as follows. The applicants purchased the property in 2021. For future plans include demolishing the existing single-family dwelling unit and constructing a two-story single-family dwelling. No demolition permit has been applied for to date. The plan shall include a full basement and is proposed to take advantage of the 1,000 square foot basement credit. Variance requested is as follows. The applicant is seeking relief from the following provisions: 270-21 floor area ratio B, a floor area ratio. In the R1S district, the floor area ratio, FAR, for the residence structure combined with the accessory structures, if any, shall not exceed 0.5. In R1 and R2 districts, the floor area ratio for the residence structure combined with the accessory structures, if any, shall not exceed 0.6 for the first 5,000 square feet of gross area, and 0.3 for any additional gross lot area, or for properties incorporating an accessory swimming pool, 0.5 for the first 5,000 square foot of gross lot area, and 0.25 for any additional gross lot area. The applicant has proposed a dwelling with an area noted as a sitting room. This area is shown to have a cathedral ceiling that extends above the allowable 12-foot max ceiling height. Because the area is proposed to be above 12 feet, per 274 definitions, floor area gross, B, floors or stories or a portion thereof with a ceiling height greater than 12 feet shall be included twice in the computation of gross floor area. For rooms with cathedral ceilings where the ceiling is the underside of a roof, the height shall be determined at the top wall plate, the point where the horizontal dimension begins to decrease. Thus, the proposed construction is over the allowable FAR and cannot be constructed as proposed. The conclusion is as follows. The proposed construction of a single-family dwelling unit is over the allowable FAR because the design incorporates a cathedral ceiling that has impact on the calculation of the allowable area. Because the proposal violates the maximum allowable floor area ratio, the dwelling may not be permitted for construction without first securing a variance.
Questions?
Questions?
Thank you, Mike. Go ahead, Jan.
Okay. Since this lot, which all the lots on lot side of Sussex Street are substandard, you know, they're not as deep, how does one determine the basement exception? Like it's 1,000-foot of basement, you give up 500 feet upstairs. But how do you do it, and how do you do the FAR and the natural area and everything else on these small lots?
Thank you, great question. So the 1,000 square feet is 1,000 square feet. It says nothing about the lot size in the code requirement. For the floor area ratio, it is determined precisely by the amount of lot that your parcel contains. So your amount of square footage that your parcel contains within your property
So,
lines.
and how much square footage then does that determine their house would be?
4172 square feet is their lot size.
Is their lot size?
4172,
So they've given up 500 feet above ground, right,
correct.
for below ground.
I-
But the total of the two, of the above and below, is not going to, it shouldn't be 3,000 square feet on a smaller lot.
So again, our basement code doesn't go into the specifics of,
I'm just saying the total, I don't care. It was 1,000 feet below, right?
correct.
And they give up 500 feet above. Well, in a 5,100 lot, that would be a 2,500 feet above and 1,000 feet below. What is it on a substandard lot? That's my question.
So that's where the calculation comes into play, where you do the 50 or the 60%, depending on if a pool is available.
Well,
The
there is-
basement is 1,000 square feet across the board.
That's what I'm asking you, Matt, but how much is the total square footage of the house, including the basement and above ground? Because it shouldn't be totaling 3,000 together. We had a real big mess, another one of these meetings, where people kept insisting their house was 1,800 square feet when it was 2,800 square feet, and we based a decision based on inaccurate or information. The total house counts your 1,000 and your upstairs, okay? And they should not be 3,000 because the lot doesn't hold a 3,000 square foot house, because the FAR can't be 0.6.
So again, are you asking me to confirm the square footage of the
I'm asking you
house?
to confirm the square footage of the house and to me, the house is the basement and above ground.
What they are proposing is 2,397 square feet for this construction.
That includes the 1,000.
I would say that does not include the 1,000
Well,
square.
that's not a house then, because your 1,000 has to be included in the FAR. So essentially, if you add your 1,000, they're at 3,397, which is way too big for any lot other than an oversized lot in Rehoboth.
I think, Jan, the point you're making is that the 1,000 is in no way connected to any other size, the percentage in the FAR that would have forced it to come down. In other words, I think what Matt's saying, that $1,000 square feet is kind of standalone and is not tied to the structure on top of it. In
It
other words,
is, I can tell you, because my neighbors are building next door, and it is definitely tied. I hear about it all the time.
then the code should say that for the basement, Matt,
That's
correct?
right.
Okay, so it does. All right.
It is
No,
tied.
it does not say that,
Oh.
that it's tied. It says 1,000 square foot credit.
Period.
Period.
See, so it's not tied.
But it doesn't mean it isn't tied. It just means it's silent on the subject.
It's better,
Would
said
Jan-
better.
Jan's thinking, I think that the 1,000 should be up to 1,000 square feet.
No, what I'm
depending on
saying
what's
is-
left.
So you have 1,000 square feet,
I
right?
understand what you're saying,
Of
right.
house that you're allowed to build because you're going to give up 500 feet up above ground. Okay? So when you do that, so in the case of the one before, the house is actually 2,800 square feet because you've given up 1,000. These are not uninhabitable basements. These are basements that are habitable, and they're counted in the FAR. An uninhabitable basement is not counted in the FAR. And my God, we've been through this a zillion times. I don't know I've sat here through hearing after hearing on this with
So-
you guys making the presentation.
Pardon for the interruption, but the code reads, a maximum of 1,000 square foot of basement may be excluded from the gross floor area of a residential structure subject to the following conditions. So that essentially says that is 1,000 square foot of free square footage that does not get counted
You have to give up
against,
500 feet above.
but you have to give up 500 square feet above.
If the lot is 2171, right?
Where the house is.
No, the lot is.
4172.
I'm sorry, the lot is
what's
4171.
4172 square feet.
So the 0.5 is going to be 2086.
Yeah, 2086 would be allowed.
Okay,
Right,
and
I'd
then,
already-
and then,
yeah.
but
Right.
then are they supposed to then subtract 500 from that?
Yes.
Right.
So that then the allowance would be
1586.
1586, right? But that's not what we have here.
No.
No, it's not correct.
If the 500 is supposed to come off the 0.5, then the number, the chart on page, what's 100 in what we got from Ann, would be the 2086 minus 500. The max on the house without a variance would be 1586, not 2086. Is that what we're saying?
I think so.
Pulling up a calculator currently to see what we have as far as.
That's why I asked you, this morning, that question, because I've sat through Corey's presentations. The commissioners, my neighbor, everybody, if you have 1,000, you give up, you get 1,000, but you can't build another more upstairs because you have 1,000 downstairs. You have to take 500
No,
off.
that-
You take 500 off what you're allowed.
Asking a question of Matt and Fred, is what the code says that you take the 0.5 times your lot, in this case, it's going to be 0.5 times 4171, which is 2086.
Right.
You then subtract 500.
That's what I
and-
understand.
And you have 1586. So if on a
Above
normal-sized lot,
Yeah,
you'd have
above ground.
2,500
And then 1,000
2,500
underneath,
less
so
than
2,500
less
total.
500.
Speaking at the same
Sorry.
So
I'm sorry, Ann.
On a normal-sized lot, you'd have 2,500 minus 500. You'd have 2,000 available above grade without a variance. Here you have 1586 above grade without a variance. Is that what the rules provide? Because if it is, there's nothing in this package that talks about that.
I mean, if it doesn't provide it here, it certainly has provided for the people who are about to build a house next door to me, and,
Yeah, but that doesn't apply.
And-
here, yeah.
I got it. I'm trying to figure out what the code is.
So where's the table? Which is the table?
It's on page 100 of
Oh, it's in
the,
our package?
in the package, it's page 3, I
It
think.
depends on which one you print it out. See,
Yeah.
the page has changed over time, so just find the table. Is this what you're, think you're
It's
looking-
sort of near the
this
front.
Here it is.
Variance request summary?
I've got it.
Yeah.
we all have it.
So part of the basement credit is number 3. FAR for the remainder of the residence structure combined with the accessory structures, if any, does not exceed 0.5 for the first 5,000 square foot of gross lot area, and 0.3 for any additional gross lot area, or for properties incorporating a swimming pool, code comes into 0.4 and then 0.25. So this code section says that I can have that amount as long as my overall above is not to the 0.5.
but their overall above is
So essentially, if we're talking about a 5,000 square foot lot here,
but we're not.
I understand that, but let's get to the baseline of this thing first before we say this or that. The baseline is 2,500 square foot for a 50%. So that means I have 2,500 above. That essentially right there is my 500 square foot penalty. I can put 1,000 square feet below, and it does not count against me for my floor area ratio.
That's,
Correct. But you can't exceed the FAR.
It doesn't get counted as far.
I'm sorry, I'm not a mathematician like Edie is. All I can tell you is that if you have a 50 by 100 lot and you choose to have a 1,000 square foot basement and you give up 500, then you have a 3,500 square
That's
foot
correct.
house, right?
That's
But
correct.
they don't have a 5,000 square foot lot, so that they have to have a smaller house that would be in proportion to the 50 by
And
100 lot.
that's what they have here. They have a 2397 house. It's a smaller house with a lot than
Yes,
what
but-
the lot is giving them. The 1,000 square foot for the basement is then given to them as a freebie. That's the way our code is written.
So they took off, so you have a 2,300 square house, right?
That's right.
So, but you had to take off 500. That would make the 2,800 square foot house.
No, Jan, that's what the variance are asking for. They're asking for 2395.
No, they're asking for, just for the airspace.
Right, well, I understand that, but I'm just saying, the 2397 is what they're proposing, including the variance. That's what they're asking for.
Yeah, but where did
Right,
the-
so if you look on, sorry, pardon the interruption.
Okay.
If you look on their submitted documentation 3, they provided a chart there. So with their allowance, so if we,
Talking about this one?
yes, ma'am, thank you.
Okay.
If you look at what their gross floor is calculated at 50%, they could have 2,087 or 86 square feet,
Right,
right?
right.
So their proposed is the 293 over because of the cathedral ceiling rule. So that's what their ask is for here today. The basement really doesn't have anything to do with this ask.
So the basement is excluded, the square footage associated with the basement is excluded from GFA by definition, so therefore it is not incorporated into the FAR calculation.
Correct.
Right, so it doesn't get added in for purposes of having a massive
You
effect.
can't say the house
So
this big.
essentially, they're allowed to build the same size house as somebody on a 50 by 100 lot.
No.
No.
Only if we grant
Two-
the variance.
Okay,
2086 is half of their lot
Okay,
size.
okay.
That's the limiting upper
Okay.
factor without a variance. It's
So there is no
2086.
500 foot?
I don't know, that's why I want to
That's
get
what I'm
back to you.
asking.
Yeah,
Well,
is there a 500? Could you help us with that?
Yeah, so if I'm proposing a basement, the 500 hit is the 50% that I'm allowed to build. So 60% of 5,000 60% of 5,000 is 3,000. 50% of 5,000 is 2,500, which my above ground has to be. So that is your 500 square foot hit right there.
Yeah, but you're kidding it. When you say it's 500 square feet, it's on a 50 by 100 lot. So what is the size house? So they're allowed to build on this house a 2,086.
Their chart lays it out, 2886, or 2086, excuse me, 2086.
And that's based on the lot size that we see today.
Correct, that's 50% of
0.5.
4171.
smaller lot, right.
Okay, so they don't have to subtract 500 square feet from what they're allowed to build?
The subtraction has already occurred in the 50%.
Okay, all right.
Yes. So normally it would be 60%. They could be here asking for the 60%, which would be quick math,
Be about
Ms.
2,500.
Herron.
Well, that's what it is on a
Roughly,
3,000
thank you,
square
yes.
foot lot. It's 2,500 above ground with a 1,000-foot
On a
basement.
that's right.
You give up your 3,000 feet above ground. Yeah, I'm very much aware of that.
This is,
We all on board?
Yes.
Any I don't know, did you finish? I think you finished, right? Yeah.
I have finished with my
Okay.
report, yes.
Any other
Thank you,
questions
Chair.
for Matt?
Matt, I have one question. Are we correct that the majority, other than 73 square feet, is airspace, really? Because it's a matter of the 12-foot ceiling and from there up. I saw that in the diagram.
That's
Do you
right.
confirm that? Right.
Yes,
And the 73 is just what would be left if that was a flat ceiling?
right, correct.
And Matt, my one question, looking at the diagram that we have, I think it was highlighted in red online. It just has a box around it. That is the open space that is in question to the front of the building.
That is correct.
And I would assume that the back room at the top of the staircase is not above 12 foot to the peak?
That's correct.
Okay. So it's I just want to make sure it's front.
Yeah,
And by the
the-
way, it's very hard. We can't read that small.
So light. The print
Even with
is
a
so light,
magnifying
I
glass, I
couldn't
can't read
So
it.
it is meant to be printed much larger than that. But yeah, understood.
So then, could that,
I'm fine
I
with
think
that.
we're good.
could this area up here, the extra space, Could a second floor be made out of it if they wanted to? I don't know what it is from.
So it is my belief that that's exactly why they get hit by the 12-foot overage.
How tall is it?
Because I believe there was an incident way before our time, I believe, that somebody went in and made that space that was above there for their cathedral ceiling an actual room. And so I think that that 12-foot was brought in there to already hit them with the floor area ratio, should they choose to
That's
go
good,
in.
that's good history. It makes,
And
it
how
makes sense.
tall is this space?
I would have to verify, and maybe the
Roughly.
applicant can speak to it.
Yeah, my name is Matt Master-Pasqua.
Well,
I'm
you
the
have
architect.
to get.
Yeah, we'll get to you. Yeah.
Okay, I'll wait until the
Okay.
architect can answer.
All right, any other questions for Matt?
I have just a couple. Other than the FAR, Matt, does the proposed house and everything else about it meet the zoning code?
The natural area. And
Natural area
And
and everything
setbacks
else?
and all.
Is so the only thing that we're to consider is the FAR? Is
I
that
believe that
correct?
is a correct statement, yes, ma'am.
Okay. With another question then. Without the cathedral ceiling, what would it take for that house or a house very similar for them to meet FAR? I mean, do you ever look at architecturally or speak to the applicant about that? I'm sure we can hear from them too when it's their turn, but I'm asking you.
You're calling out the designer in me now, so.
Okay, okay, well, that's fine.
So I think there's some opportunity to decrease the pitch in that area that would potentially, cause the 12-foot to be lessened. Maybe not take advantage of a cathedral ceiling, but again, that's a design aspect that
sure.
the applicant is going
I
for.
got corrected once for making a suggestion once. We are not allowed to design.
No, I wasn't, I was asking what has to happen
Right.
to make it structurally, to make it meet FAR without a variance?
A collar tie or a floor system or something of that sort would have to be dropped into below the 12-foot requirement.
I see.
So in other words, you would drop the ceiling down by one measure or another to the 12-foot, and that would no longer count against you double.
I see.
And we don't redesign applications.
No, I'm-
Correct.
No, but we do ask the applicant to defend the design choices that they make
Right.
in the context of whether they're confronted with an exceptional practical difficulty. So the subject's not entirely off the limits.
Matt, one question. Has there ever been a case, or does the code allow for a proration of that 1,000? In other words, if they were to take 800 square feet in the basement, do they get another 50 square feet above?
No, so it is a
all or none.
trade-off.
It's all or none?
It's all or
All none.
nothing.
Okay,
That's right.
I wasn't sure. Yeah.
So how tall actually is this ceiling? I mean, because it doesn't look like the whole thing is.
Well, I think their section there is a little bit deceiving in that the modeling, if you will, goes up and does not show any collar tie system, any ceiling system in there. There's got to be something in there from a construction perspective. There has to be something in there. That truss system can exist like it is shown on page.
Okay, all right, I'm just curious of how far off
good
their
point,
ceiling.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure what page that is there, but it's showing the section and it has a red block. That red block, it denotes a top of, and that's going to be where a collar tie or a truss system or something of that nature is going to be placed in there. That can't be built like they're showing that 3D model. It's impossible to build that way, unless it was steel, which I don't think you're building out of steel.
Matt, can I go back to the way we started? I just want to be 100% clear about numbers. So on a 5,000 square foot lot, you can have 2,500 square feet above ground and 1,000-foot basement square foot. So that's 3,500.
That's correct.
If you don't have the basement, you can have what, a 3,000 square foot house?
Correct.
Okay, so just let me, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's, with no basement, you get 3,000 square feet. So using the same model, which we've done here today, we've said we take the size of the lot and do a 50, we're essentially doing 50% and 60%, right?
Right.
We could do. So these gentlemen have the choice of 50% of 4172, which we calculated as 2086, if they want a 1,000-foot square basement. Or they get 60% of that, which I didn't calculate yet, but, you know, it's 12, whatever. 60%, I have a calculator too, but they could get 60% if they had no 1,000-square-foot basement.
That's
So
right.
those are their choices just going into an architectural situation. Do we want a basement or no? And these are the basic numbers that they have to think about. Is
So
that, go ahead.
yeah, to answer your question,
Yes.
the 60% would be 2503.
Okay. Okay, 2503. So those are the choices these gentlemen are making as they're planning their home.
That's right.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Jan, you had
No,
something else?
they actually have a choice of a non-habitable basement, 80, that.
That's true.
That is 6'6" tall. And.
That's true.
And they could have put that in instead of a habitable basement. Non-habitable basements were originally put in the code for, you know, heaters and stuff, hot water heaters and all that other stuff. So.
Okay, no other questions. We are going to move on to, sorry for the delay in all our questions, our applicant.
Michael, do you want to start?
But he's got to get sworn in.
We have,
So, yeah, so the way we began is we're going to have one of you testify at a time.
Okay.
And you're an owner, I presume, so you're going to give me your name and address, and I'm going to administer the oath, and then you can begin your presentation.
Okay.
Okay, so name and address for the record.
My name is Michael Greger, 812 South Avenue, Secane, Pennsylvania, 19018.
And Mr. Greger, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes. Oh, no, I go.
So now's your opportunity.
After that, all that conversation.
Yeah, right.
So, as was discussed, I mean, we're here to request a variance to the FAR because of the airspace, because of the cathedral ceiling or double height living room, basically. It was to give us some architectural interest for the house. The house is proportional to the lot size, and we opted for to explore the full basement option to utilize that space efficiently given the size of the house. And that way we could store bikes, et cetera, without difficulty in the basement. So with this variance request summary, which I think was adequately discussed, and identified that we have a substandard lot on Sussex Street. When we did purchase the lot, it was a for sale by owner. We did purchase it in October 2021, and it is a bungalow-style house. Structurally, we considered whether we could rebuild the house, but it really is 60-plus, probably even 75-plus old. It was really a three-season house, so structurally would not support a second bathroom. So it was easier and more cost-efficient to consider rebuilding the house completely. A lot of the current lot is covered with a carport and with concrete, and so a lot of that would be removed and natural landscape would be replaced and allow for rainwater penetration, et cetera, for the soil. So some other points. We are in compliance with the setback guidelines by the city, and we are meeting the coverage allowance also stipulated in the code. So we're making, you know, every effort that we can to meet the code. We were surprised that when we came up with this, that the vaulted ceiling was counted twice. Coming from Philadelphia, that's not a typical calculation with vaulted or double height ceilings. And if this were a standard lot, this would not even be questioned, actually. We did review the plans with our neighbors, and they like the plans a lot, and I have memos from them as well. And our one neighbor, John, provided his phone number if you want to call him, but he's in Florida. And And we're trying, again, we're just trying to design a house that is in keeping with the feel of the houses on the street. So, and we are losing our carport and our storage area. And I think those were the major considerations for the floor area ratio. Pictures of the current house were provided, so I believe you have those. And then some of the stats from our architect were also provided, as is the survey plan for both the existing and the proposed lot. So, and then our proposed design is this type of design. So again, it meets the feel of the street as well. So
That doesn't match what we're seeing here.
that should have been in your package.
Yeah, yeah.
This was provided. So
Oh, we don't,
and you
we,
could have
we
these.
don't have the, we don't have the package.
Well, you can have these.
Well, I don't want, I no, seeing them is enough, but no, we never saw
You can hold
these
them up,
before.
yeah.
But,
Oh, no.
but you are certainly welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To have us
Talk
pass
to it.
those around. I would encourage it.
And Ann will need one for part of the record, since they were,
I think, yeah.
Matt, you have one, right?
You all didn't receive that?
Nope. This is all we have. What's
Didn't
online?
get the hard copies.
no, I never saw this.
And to be clear, where is is this the open area? Is this the second floor?
No, it's the one above the.
It's over here.
It's
This is
those
the open
three
area. Okay,
windows
great. It's
above the porch
Above the porch.
roof.
Oh, I see.
You'll have it?
Where is it?
Above the porch.
Okay, so it's one story on this side, is what you're, on this side is one story?
Well, the front side, front of it
Oh, the
is
front is.
The
vaulted.
front is just one.
Okay, one at a time. And no, it's fine. You don't do this every day.
No, we do not.
And we don't want to intimidate anyone, but just if you could
Sure.
address us from the microphone.
Sure.
And one at a time as best we can.
Yeah.
Recognizing.
Part of my excitement.
So could you answer the question that was asked?
Behind the porch, it's the living room space that has the double height ceiling. So
I see. So we're seeing a cutaway, basically.
you're seeing the cutaway to
I get
illustrate
it now.
the-
Okay. Thank
the
you.
airspace, yes.
Thank you. Okay. Anything additional or other testimony?
Do you want to add? You need to be sworn in.
Oh,
So your name and address, please?
John Pantello, 812 South Avenue, Secane, PA.
Mr. Pantello, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
So you may
Well,
begin.
I was just going to add, you know, this is, the vaulted area is very limited. It's only over the living room space, and then, you know, the second floor cuts into it there. And this is only representing half the house, so this is a slice.
Right.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that, yeah.
May I add also that, you know, given Matt's comment, you know, about, I guess in the past, someone may have put a floor there, and on our chart, it's basically, even if you added a floor in, all you gain is 73 square feet because of the sloping of the ceiling. So it's only, that's the usable space, but we have no intention of putting a floor in, so.
Okay, anything additional?
Not for me.
Okay, sir?
Yes, Matthew Masterpasqua, 2235 Ritter Street, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 19125.
Sir, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes. Okay, so I am the architect for the project, so I can answer some of these more technical questions about heights and what have you. As Michael said, if you were to add a floor in that space, you would only gain usable area of 72 square feet. This is because the front of the house, the pitch of the roof is steeper than the rear. So we did what's called a shed dormer in the rear so that we could get a ceiling height of 7.6 or greater, which meets code, to provide a living room and a bedroom, or like a sitting room and a bedroom in the rear of the second floor. So in the front, from the deck of the second floor, so from the actual flooring of the first floor to the top plate of the exterior wall is somewhere between 14 and 15 feet, which would allow only, 4 to 5 feet worth of ceiling height in that front space if a floor was added there.
Do you know if we count if we don't start counting the square footage until after we get beyond a certain height?
So my understanding is anything with a top plate greater than 12 feet gets counted twice.
Right, but when you're counting the 73 square feet that you get if you did create another floor there, are you counting all the way into like 1 inch from the ceiling, or only like starting at 4 feet? Do you count that?
Right, got you. So I took the ceiling height of 7 feet, which is the residential minimum, and I counted that area. So once we got to 7 feet at the second floor, I did not count anything lower than that.
So you didn't
towards the
count
front of the
anything
house.
lower, so there would be room for suitcases and all kinds of stuff.
I guess so, right in front of those windows, yes.
But it wouldn't count, gotcha.
Right, there's also limits in the code as far as all of that stuff pertains. So, 6'8" is the absolute minimum ceiling height for any habitable space. You need an operable window. These windows would not be operable. So this is not designed to take a room in the front by any means.
It sounds like this was a surprise to the applicants.
Yes.
And when you discovered this, why didn't you propose another solution that brought that, very high and brought it down, as Fred was saying, bring it down closer to get under 12, under that, and thereby saving square footage?
Sure. So we did discuss that. I was hired to design a dream retirement home for my clients. So I advised we can go for the variance if you'd like this design. So that's what we decided to do.
Okay, but we need to understand the hardship here. What is the exceptional
So
hardship here?
our stance is that, again, given that our lot is smaller than standard subdivisions would be in this day and age, this house would be compliant on a standard lot.
Okay, yeah, but small lots in Rehoboth Beach are not exceptional. They're normal. We have some larger ones, but smaller ones. And again, the code does curtail, if that's the right word, the larger double lots and bigger lots. If people want to just keep building larger homes, we have code for that, but you don't get any benefit back on these. I mean, they've been there forever, not forever, but when the city was laid out. So you need to explain to us this exceptional practical difficulty here.
So I will admit I'm not an attorney, so getting to that is not really my end of the topic.
So
I
could I
was
say
speaking more to the
something?
technical aspect of it.
I could ask some questions too.
I have one question, that's all. My house was like this, so I totally get why you want it. But I believe that Craig Karsnett said aesthetics, that having the appropriate aesthetics could be exceptional practical difficulty, and there's a court case on that. So I would say that, and they don't know this, how would they possibly know something like that?
Well, I think the
that is
architect
part of it.
definitely recognizes aesthetics in his work. So what is the pitch on this roof as proposed?
I believe we are at 512. I can check my notes here.
And would you anticipate that in order to get or to alleviate the need for any variance, that you'd have to bring that roof down to some other pitch or a flat pitch?
Right. So, the solution essentially, without redesigning the entire home, with keeping the program that my clients would like, would essentially be cutting the double height space down and doing a low roof in the front and having sort of an awkward condition with, it's not even a gable end, an exposed ridge on the back side of that. So, aesthetic-wise, I believe this is the right design.
How would it matter if you just lowered the basement height, as Jen had suggested, to the 6.5 foot, whereas then you would have another 500 foot up above? Would that not be a possibility?
I can't really speak to that. Again, I was designing to the program I was given, so.
Well, let me ask these gentlemen then, would that be a possibility?
I mean,
It's only another, I don't know what the height is now, but it goes to 6.5 foot and then it's not counted.
Because it's non-habitable.
Right.
Because it's
considered-
non-habitable, they
right, it's
can't
not-
put a bedroom.
You can't
they
put plumbing in
live
it,
down
you
there,
can't-
they
But they
couldn't.
said they're gonna put bicycles in there, right?
Well, and the current design has a bedroom and a bath and a media
Right.
space because of family. And washer and dryer.
Wanted as bedrooms.
Because of family, that way people are spread out and
I just thought I'd
kids
throw that
can go
out there.
downstairs and.
Well, my question for you gentlemen is the owners here, and I've had this question all along since I first read your packet, all times I read through it. What other plans have you considered?
We did initially consider a flatter plan, or the basement as a standard. But again, then the living space becomes more compact and people are more on top of each other. And then with, nephews and nieces and nephews and all that, it was easier. It seemed to make more sense to go for the full basement exemption, to put in a basement and a large media room there. And that way we can separate and allow, the family to go into different entertainment spaces, so.
I read that you purchased the property in October of 2021 in a for sale by owner.
Correct.
And did you investigate at the time what you'd be able to build and?
He said we would be grandfathered, so.
But so investigating was asking
just
the
asking him
previous owner.
Yeah,
So, but you knew you were buying a lot that was smaller than the average lot in, so what investigation did you
It
do?
wasn't represented that way. And
Yeah, we didn't realize that it was a smaller lot than normal. All we know is that, available lots within the city are quite limited.
Right.
The location of this behind, on Sussex, behind Culture Pearl, was quite a very nice location. The cost of the lot was high, but we thought that due to its location in the city of Rehoboth, that's where we'd want to retire to. So otherwise, we could replace it with another bungalow, but then it wouldn't have the architectural appeal or anything in terms of future resale if once we have our demise. So.
So you absolutely cannot consider another design that would bring that,
Far.
Bring the FAR down, bring the ceiling height down, reducing that, and maybe it is a variance for a smaller number, but, reducing that number down. I understand the aesthetic question with the windows. If you drop that all the way down, you're going to lose those windows over the porch. That I get, but you're absolutely set on this is the design that you cannot consider anything else.
I don't know if we're absolutely set on it. We're asking you if we can do it.
Because
it's only a couple square feet we're asking for, and it's really unusable space, so.
Sorry. Yeah, it's really the airspace that really threw us off, the double count.
Okay.
Jan, you said that are all the homes on that side 84 deep?
I used to live on Sussex.
Right,
Street.
that's why I'm asking you.
But I lived on 77, farther up, where they were 100 feet deep. But that block, where Pat Caluzzi lives on that block, they're all,
Very short.
and the same, I think on Kent at that end, and Cookman also is shorter. I mean, the depth isn't as much.
They have a width problem too. They're 48 wide here, I noticed. They're not even 50 wide.
They're 49 and change.
Yeah, 49.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's lots of stuff in town that's not really 50 by 100 or 100 by, I mean, just, surveying back in the day of Camp Rehoboth wasn't
Would
what
that
it
be
is.
exceptional, though, the depth of the lot? or
No, not on those
Right.
streets
That
and
was my
that
question to you.
section of Rehoboth Beach.
Yeah.
That is not
Right.
an exception.
I have another question for the applicants. I think I'm understanding that you feel that your issue is if you had a 5,000 square foot lot, the same house would meet everything, so what's the problem? Is that really kind of, did I say that correctly, or should I be
Yes,
corrected?
Yeah, I mean, it would be fine on a standard lot, right? We wouldn't be here, so.
But that's your issue.
Yeah, and architecturally, it's gives a little more interest for the street and for us, so it has a lot more street appeal, so, which I think would add to the city, so.
Okay, Mark, any questions? More additional?
I'm looking for something exceptional.
Okay.
That's.
Edie?
No more questions.
Dan, any more?
No, I'm ready to
questions?
make a
Bill, any
motion.
questions?
Yeah, no, but since they aren't lawyers, and I'm going to play lawyer here. You got four things you need to meet. What Mark was saying is that and one of them is exceptional practical difficulty, and you sat through the earlier presentation, so you heard lots of lawyers. That's what we need to hear, legally, in order to be able to grant it. And so I want to encourage you to, think about that for a second, the three of you, and what is the exceptional practical difficulty of meeting it? It isn't a 5,000 square foot lot, so we understand that, but you do have the lot that you have. You got the zoning rules that you have, and you need to give us something to consider on the exceptional and practical difficulty in order to meet what the rules are that we're governed by. So that was more of a suggestion than anything else.
So, and that's kind of my comment. You all are not attorneys. Any attorney that comes here knows about the opinions that have been issued under exceptional practical difficulties, and aesthetics was a recent one. Many lawyers do not agree with that decision, but right now nobody's appealed it. So aesthetics is something, that maybe that's something that's very important to you.
That is important to me.
Right. This is a big investment for us, and financially, and to reduce it to replacing a bungalow with a bungalow, the appeal, the architectural interest would not be there. So
we've had cases before where the architect has been here, and I'm not going to pick on you, but asking for a variance, and there was just nothing exceptional about the request. And as applicants to the architect, you are customers to the architect. Give me something that fits. The city has laid down these rules that we adjudicate over, and if an applicant convinces us that this is really a hardship, then that's what we weigh. But the rules are the rules here, and we need that justification, that understanding as to, man, this is really hard. We cannot do this because of that, and that's what we are listening here.
Right. And the cost of redesign, we would have to shoulder, and it's all for airspace that would not be utilized anyway. And that's where the code is not meeting the reality of the house.
Right, but I now understand why, from Matt's explanation of history, of why that the light bulb went off. Yeah, after the city leaves, they throw in the joist, and we get another room, boom. And so there must be something in the history that triggered that revision to the zone. And I feel sorry here for you. Nobody, when they're buying a house, nobody's in there reading city zoning code, before they purchase a house. I appreciate that. And as Jan said, the lawyers that come in here do understand those four factors in that. So I'm going to ask you again if you can, describe what's exceptional about this before we, close down and ask for any public. I don't know if the gentleman in the back wants to speak to this or not. Before we close this down. So
while they're deliberating there, if I look at this chart that we've been looking at a couple of times, Barry, I see that without the double height, they're still over the FAR. They'd still need a variance.
Understood.
73
They'd
feet.
still need a variance.
That is correct. That is correct. Yes, I see
So
that.
it isn't like it's skate home free.
With the current design.
That's right. That's right. No matter how it might be.
For some reason, when I printed this, I never got this one. I just missed it. I missed it. So it'd be 51.7 or 0.5517.
Yeah, I think they're over 73 feet or something.
Yeah.
I thought that was all in the airspace. That's not all in the airspace?
No,
No.
this is if it even is flattened off.
Yeah, if they took out that double height, they're
They
still over.
they
by
still
seven.
need a
The house is
variance
still
because
over
their
because of
FAR
the size of the
is
lot.
too large then. I'm sorry, the FAR is too large then.
Because even with the 1,000 square foot exemption for the basement, we don't get that anyway, so, because we don't have that much.
Well, when we were building our house, we actually had to make it a little narrow. When we were building our house, we had to make it a little narrower for the same reason. as that we were over, and it was just, you know.
But I said, that's between you and your architect. We
Right.
cannot
Yeah.
make any recommendations
No,
here, so.
May I ask, is,
Okay.
Barry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
go
Is there any outbuildings, garage, shed, or anything like
Yeah,
that?
there's a big tool shed.
There's a shed, and how big is the shed? And does that enter into it? Matt says, no, it doesn't, so never mind.
It's gone.
We're not keeping the shed.
No,
Yeah,
Well, then I'll keep the shed, that's why, I was gonna say, yeah.
when a demolition permit is issued, it's for the raising of the entire parcel, not just pieces of.
Okay.
Carport, shed,
An
Everything,
easy
that's right.
solution would be get rid of the shed, we've already done that.
we're not allowed to give solutions.
No, really?
Thank you. So would there be a scenario in where we get a conditional approval to not build a floor in this double height space?
Say this again, you're looking for
A proviso to the approval stating that my clients will never build in that double height space.
Still over far.
You're
still-
still over far,
Yeah.
that's the whole point.
Right. No, that's,
No.
you understand,
is
you
this-
understand, if we grant a variance, it's with the property forever.
It lives with,
Right.
when you sell,
Forever.
if you ever sell, it lives.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it's for
So
the
we-
property, it's
We
not for the
protect the
people.
property.
And would that variance be able to include a proviso in perpetuity for not building in that double height space?
A condition.
Yeah, just like you granted them a conditional approval. I was wondering if that was on the table for this variance.
I mean, we could put a condition like that into a approval. However, the city doesn't inspect routinely recipients of variances to confirm that they're not violating restrictions that were applied. So what we try and avoid attaching conditions to variances because we're not in a position to regulate or govern their compliance. It does happen, it's not, and it happens for good reason, but it is suboptimal to operate that way.
Yeah, so I guess going one step further, if we were able to reduce 72 square feet out of the design, put in this proviso, I mean, essentially, if somebody, after our clients are gone, if somebody does put the second floor in, they're essentially breaking the law. They're not getting a building permit, they're not getting a zoning permit, they're doing it, without any legal.
And God help us, people do that all the time here.
Sure, yeah, they do, absolutely.
So this is what I don't understand. Without the double height, okay, so the double height is 73 square feet, or,
No.
No, the double height's
238.
greater than that, but the usable area out of it is
No.
not the entire area.
no, what I'm saying is,
Mm-hmm.
if you kept the double height, how much are you still over?
73.
73, that's what I thought, okay. So 73, this is Edie's skill set, not mine. So if you brought your house in a foot all around, if you could keep the double height, because I have, I think aesthetically it's nice, but what does that bring you?
Appreciate the compliment on the aesthetics. So we would still be over because of the double height. So if we were able to reduce the 72 and cut the double height, that's the only compliant version of the
Well, I'm
house.
saying though, if you kept the double height, this is correct, then you would still be 73 feet over. Is that what this is saying?
No, so
No.
if we were to cut the double height, we would still be 72, 73.
You cut it without the double height.
No,
Without the double height, it's still,
73 square
the
feet
house
over.
is still too large by 73 square feet.
And if you brought it in a foot
make it
all
narrow
around, you're
by
not going to achieve
you're not
that
going to get what you
savings.
want. Oh, that's the problem. Okay, I don't have a problem with the double height, frankly, because
Right,
I think
so-
aesthetically it's the right thing to do. But if the house is too big for the lot, if you exclude the double height, you got a problem.
So if you redesigned the house so that it was 73 feet short, because of the double height, you'd still be over far. That's another way to think about it.
Yes.
How much over far is the double height putting you?
That would be the 230.
93.
Everything except the
293.
73.
It's the second column, or third column over.
On chart 3.
Second column of numbers,
So it would be that minus 72.
minus this, yeah,
Right.
minus the 73,
So 220 something.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Guys,
Yeah, I mean, I would just put it out there that we are willing to redesign or subtract the 72 if the double height space is agreeable based on the aesthetic argument.
I kind of lost you. I lost you on that
I'm
one.
very confused.
So
Sorry,
I
so
don't
we-
know.
we would be able to redesign the footprint of the house to reduce it by 72 square feet. And then the only non-compliant area we have would be the double height.
But you'd still be 293 minus 73 square foot over.
So,
But it
yeah, I
would all
mean,
be the double height.
right, it would all be the double height. So we were just discussing that the house, even without the double height, is still 72 over our allowable area, 73. So I was saying we could redesign this footprint to reduce 72.
But then we go back to what Mr. Townsend was saying, in perpetuity, we cannot inspect properties.
But there's
you know.
not really, from what architect and even Matt was saying, the double height isn't such that they could put a ceiling in there and have a room above it. It would be like a closet. Is that
Right.
correct?
Correct.
But I'm still not seeing an exceptional practical difficulty here on this.
Well, I guess I
Yeah.
Well, I
am.
guess the
Okay.
I am
aesthetics.
based on the
On the
aesthetics.
aesthetics.
On the
So
aesthetics.
at this point, is it, let me,
We could cut that down, but it would look,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we change the roof line. it's
well,
not
we
going
don't,
to-
we're not here to force you into an ugly looking home. It looks beautiful, by the way. We can't vote on beauty of a house. Are you guys good with everything you've said?
You want to say anything else?
No, I have nothing.
Yeah, I mean, aesthetically, yeah. it's
Okay. Is it,
aesthetically, yeah.
all right, I want to ask the public at this point, are you here to speak?
No, I'm just here to get educated about FAR.
Okay.
How's that go? How's that going?
Yeah, how's that going?
How's that working for you?
We should have
Depends,
done
what
that.
size lock do you have?
We can, yeah, we'll give you the website so you can read it. Okay. With no public input, at this point, I'm going to open up to, we're going to close down public. We may ask you a question, but we're going to discuss amongst ourselves. And
Yeah, did you have anything more you wanted to give us that?
I can give you this whole book if you want. but-
It's what we have already, just it's in a
Okay,
nice
it's just in a
book.
book.
Nice
Right.
book.
All right.
okay, I'm going to start Bill this time, if you have any
Well,
conversation
Yeah,
on this.
the issue is exceptional practical difficulty, which is not, there's not much there. The question is if we were to, suggest a continuation and a redesign that eliminated the 73, would the board feel that, given the fact that the only overage at that point is the double count, that we are, feel that exceptional practical difficulty exists there, not because the lot is, I'm not buying that we should look at it because it's a 5,000 square foot lot, buying that it is a 4176, that there's an exceptional practical difficulty in the design that where the only overage is this internal double count.
Right.
And, could come to a conclusion that we think it meets quick check for that reason. That's sort of what I'm throwing out as a thought.
Well,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I agree with you, Bill, because, I mean, I've been here a long time, and
We've all been here a long time today.
well, I just found out my son's car is just still at the Philadelphia airport, so I don't have to rush anymore. So I think that you have to get rid of that 73 square feet. I mean, you just can't. I don't know how it's meeting the setbacks if it's over on the size of the house, but Matt says it is. But I don't have a problem, and I think aesthetically, I think in this last Board of Adjustment decision that was made in Superior Court, they determined aesthetics was part of, it's part of a hotel, then it's part of a house, even more so. So I don't have a problem with that. And it was theaters, frankly, Matt, that it was less houses and more theaters and bigger buildings where they could, seat up to the ceiling, if the ceiling was, 30 feet high or something. So it was a whole different reason that that I've ever seen this one enforced before. I've never seen it in a house before, so.
Okay. And I'm kind of hung up on the exceptional practical difficulty based, on just simply the size of the lot. I would think there are solutions. It could look the same, maybe a little bit smaller, room size smaller, foundation, footprint, and try to achieve, 293 square feet is pretty large,
But it's a double layer space.
I know, but again, we can't police that forever. Delaware does teach us that says if it's, minimal, a foot here, a foot there. We've had cases 4 inches over the property line. We've heard, all of these. So I am having a very hard time seeing how this, it's a beautiful home, but I'm having a tough time with seeing it. This is an exceptional practical difficulty. And whether we make a vote on it or whether you go away, maybe you don't need a variance in the future. But I'm having a tough time seeing an exceptional practical difficulty on this.
I too am having trouble seeing an exceptional practical difficulty, although you guys have done a beautiful job, your architect as well. But I like your house. I think it's attractive. I think it would add to the neighborhood. But I like Bill and I guess Jan, you have to get rid of the 73 feet no matter what. You have to get rid of that. I could be in favor after thinking, but I can't swear I would. I could be in favor of a variance for just double height to allow you to use your aesthetic, whatever, I can't think of the word. Use your aesthetics. Incorporate your aesthetics into the house. But I cannot vote. If the vote was taken right now on the variance that we would have to be presented based on what's in front of us, I would have to vote no, because there's no exceptional practical difficulty. It's a want, not a need. It's a big want. It's a beautiful want, but it's not a need. It's not a need. So I guess I'm on the fence. I would consider going with Bill's idea of maybe tabling or whatever, asking to come back with a, you had a word?
Continuance?
A continuance, is that the correct word? To come back to us with another thought pattern and have us come back to it again. I guess that's where I am.
Well, I also have to admit that the exceptional difficulty is thin. I think this is the word that Bill used. But Jan threw me a lifeline there with the cosmetics, with the aesthetics. I think this house would be an asset to Sussex Street. So I look at it, the whole thing. I mean, no offense, but the existing house is not the most beautiful house on the street. And this is such an improvement that I really would like you guys to give me any reason to vote for it. I really want to vote for it. And if it's taking away 73 feet, if that's what it has to take, then that's, maybe the way we have to go.
So I'm going to ask Fred here. Should we, ask the applicant for a vote or move to ask the applicant to move to continue? I mean, we are here for you, May, June, July,
I don't know.
We live here.
I don't know how long it would take for the applicant and the architects together to come, get their minds around another proposal.
Or if they want to.
Or if they want to. So we could, if we knew what the right number was, you could grant something less than is being requested, and then that would task the applicant to design to that area. We could agree instead to table this, but I don't think we would want to table it for a year and bring it back up. I mean, it would have to be, we have to reasonably expect that you're going to come back in. Otherwise, we're going to need another application fee, and we're going to renotice the public and everything. So there are a lot of administrative issues that arise.
Continue this till May? Continue it until, this is April, right?
Well, rather than continue it, it sounds like the architect already has a plan how to get rid of that 73 feet. Maybe you could share it with us. We can make a contingent on that.
I do not have a solid plan, but I'm always up for the challenge. I have no doubt we can squeeze 73 square feet out of the house. The question is how.
Yeah, I prefer Mark to see it.
Okay,
Yes,
yeah.
I do too.
I thought maybe you
wouldn't-
already had it as a back.
I
we
wouldn't
would've
vote, I
shown
wouldn't
that.
vote on it without. I need to see it.
So then, it sounds like a tabling or a continuance would be appropriate. Is it-
May acceptable?
Or is,
Well, I have to ask
What is
Ann, too. Are we past the May notice?
Right.
Can we,
Well, we wouldn't need to, if we table it for 1 month to the next meeting, we don't need to renotice it.
So it won't cost you anything.
It'll be it'll be the fourth Monday of the month.
It's the
no, we
third this
changed,
week.
we changed it because of Memorial Day.
May 20th, I believe?
May 20th?
Day, so it's changed to May 20th.
May 20th.
Okay, yeah,
3 weeks.
we can do that.
So you can come back on May 20th?
Yeah.
So then we just
That's
need
not too quickly.
we just need a motion to table.
I move that we table.
I second.
All in favor? Aye. And you get to go first next time.
That's 3 weeks from today. Does that give you enough time?
For the challenge, like I said.
Well,
Yeah, you
no,
wanna
but
get
it shouldn't be an unreasonable one.
No, it's
All right.
You want to get us the materials at least a few days beforehand. Don't
Yes.
Yes.
walk in here
Sure.
just giving us
Please,
the stuff.
please.
Right, good point.
And I'm going to turn it to you. We have one new case in May, right? Any additional? That's it? And this one. Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Can I ask a question?
So
It
moved.
has nothing
All
to do
right.
with this.
Thank you for attending.
Seconded.
What was your question?
Thank
This
you.
gentleman wants to ask a question.
Oh, yeah, adjournment's fine, but, so talking to our builder, because we were envisioning demolition in September, but he said, just for his planning's sake, he said we should try to get our plans in by July. Is that with that? Like,
that's
You'll have to ask him, we don't
That would
know.
be up to
him.
Matt.
That's not you.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.